This regular meeting of the Board of Education for March 20th, 2018 is called to order. Welcome to everyone present and to our television viewers. For tonight's meetings, any items that will be voted on this evening have been posted as required by state law. This meeting is being televised live and will be replayed through the next 2 weeks. Please check the board website for replay times. This meeting is also being streamed live for our PPS TV services website. As a reminder, we have our PPS Ombudsman, Judy Martin, attending all regular board meetings. Judy, can you raise your hand? Right back there in the audience. Specifically, Judy will be here to listen to the public comments and, if appropriate, provide additional support to families who need or want it. Judy can be reached at 503-916-3045 or ombudsman@pps.net. We also have interpreters here this evening. I'd like to ask them all to come forward at this time and to introduce themselves in the language that they'll be interpreting and inform the audience where they'll be standing. Please come forward.
Kính chào quý vị. Nếu quý vị cần thông dịch viên người Việt Nam, xin quý vị về phía sau của hội trường sẽ có thông dịch viên cho quý vị. Xin cảm ơn quý vị.
Buenas tardes, me llamo Lucía Cabrejos, intérprete en español. Si me necesitan, voy a estar allá al fondo sobre la pared.
大家好，歡迎嚟到呢個教育會會議。咁我係 Vivian， 我係識講中文、普通話兩種都識講。如果你有咩需要幫助嘅，去後邊揾我。唔該晒。
Здравствуйте, меня зовут Татьяна. Вы можете меня найти с этой стороны, с правой стороны. Добро пожаловать в этот митинг. Если вам нужен перевод на русском языке, пожалуйста, найдите меня с правой стороны еще раз. Спасибо большое.
Thank you. So before we get to our agenda items tonight, I'd like to provide an overview of the business of the board that we'll be conducting tonight. We'll begin with the recognition of our PIL state playoff basketball teams and then hold second readings and votes on proposed policies relating to cash management, diploma requirements, and school property naming. We'll also consider amendment to the non-discrimination anti-harassment policy and provide an update on the public records policy revisions. The board will then hear a report from the superintendent, followed by student and general public comment. We'll have an update on our 2 middle school openings and other program transitions, a vote on the Lamont Charter School renewal, hold a discussion on the 2018-19 budget, and consider 4 Step 3 complaints. Following the conclusion of this board meeting, the board will have a 2-part executive session. So to kick off our evening this night, the country may be transfixed on March Madness, but we had our own March Madness here in the state of Oregon, and the PIL was right in the middle of it. It was quite a month of basketball for the PIL. 4 PPS schools represented our district in the Oregon State 6A basketball championship tournament. The board and all PPS were proud to see 3 boys teams, Lincoln, Grant, and Jefferson, and the Benson girls basketball team qualify for the 6A state basketball tournament. I'd like to ask our district athletic director, Marshall Haskins, who has his own PIL basketball credentials as a Jefferson Democrat, to individually recognize our teams. Director Haskins, there you are. We're gonna, Marshall's going to provide some background on each team's journey to the state tournament, and then we'll have a picture and provide them with certificate.
First, I'd like to say thank you to the board for your support of extracurricular activities, both athletics and activities, and state tournaments, a culmination of sometimes 3 or 4 years of work, but also certainly of a whole year's worth of work. And all of these teams also are outstanding academic students. Many of them will be going on to college to play college basketball, so I'm proud to represent them here today. I'd like to begin by having the Principal Wilson and the Benson girls basketball team come up, please. I'd like to take a moment to talk a little bit about their season and their coach, and I guess I'll begin with just publicly saying thank you to Coach Knox. What many of you don't know is Coach Knox applied for the boys' job at Benson, and Coach Wilson and I saw something in him that he didn't see in himself, and so we twisted his arm and proudly say we strongly encouraged him to be the girls' coach. And the result of that is what we have in front of us, which is the second place team in the state tournament of Oregon. That's what I'm talking about. Benson's, the girls team, had a historic run this season. They finished 23-6, finished as co-champions to Grant High School in our league. They hadn't been to the state tournament since 1994. So this is even a greater achievement considering, I think in Eric's first season, they won 2 games in the first season. So 2 years later, they're here. And other accomplishments, 3 of the girls made first team All-PAL, Junior Taylor Lyday, Sierra Ellington, and Mackenzie Porter. At the state tournament, Taylor was one of the 2 players who was unanimous first team, and Mackenzie was also first team all-tournament. So in honor of their season, the school board and district athletic office would like to present them with a certificate to go in their trophy case of Benson that says that 6A state championship Benson High School is congratulated for their phenomenal achievement in the girls basketball presented by the school board and district athletics. Thank you, Benson. And what will go down as maybe one of the most phenomenal athletic achievements, the PIL boys basketball, for the first time ever, placed first, second, and third in the state tournament. It's never happened again, and so phenomenal achievement by those schools. I like to have the Lincoln boys basketball team come down. I think Sean Maley and Coach Adelman are here to represent Lincoln and their team. Will you guys come down?
Go Cards.
Lincoln finished the season, I think, 19-10, and you might think 10 losses seem like a lot for a third place team. The problem is that 4 of those losses came to Jefferson and Benson. 5 of those losses came to Benson and Jefferson, and then 4 more of those losses came to other teams in our league. We ended up with 7 teams in the top 30 in the state, so it was a very hard league to be in. I want to publicly thank Coach Adelman for his tremendous coaching, and Jessica Russell for the support, and Sean for support. The Lincoln team was #1 in defense in the PIL, top 10 defense in the state, top 10 assists per game in the state. They actually beat 3 teams, league champions. So again, we talk about how tough our league was. Lincoln beat the Mount Hood champions, the Metro League champions, the Three River League champion, which is a phenomenal feat in itself. Bryce Sloan was one of 2 players to be unanimously voted by the coaches for all tournament. This is the 3rd time in Lincoln's history to have a player voted all tournament unanimously. And again, they finished 3rd in the PIO, which is a very big deal, but more importantly, they're part of a phenomenal year of being 1, 2, 3 in the state for the PIO. Congratulations, Lincoln Cardinals.
Okay, here we go. Great, thank you.
The second part of that unprecedented finish in the state of Oregon was the Jefferson Democrats, led by Coach Pat Strickland, Athletic Director Neil Baird, administrators Margaret Calvert and Ricky Allen. Can you guys come down, please? Jefferson, over the last 2 years, has a record of 53-5 and only 1 loss in the last 2 years to a state of Oregon team, which is a phenomenal feat. Unfortunately for them, that 1 loss came in the state championship game by 1 point. However, they had a tremendous season. Hats off to the team. Although they didn't reach their goal of winning state championship, they had a great year. The team wants to send a special thanks to the student body, the school administration, the Jefferson community for all the support this year. Again, last year they were state champions. This year they came in 2nd in the state. 2 years prior they won state, so this is kind of what Jefferson does, is represent PIO in a tremendous manner. And in honor of their accomplishment this year and success they've had for the last couple of years, the board and the district athletic office would like to present them with, one other thing before that. Also in the state tournament is the first time that one league has swept all of the all-tournament awards. And that was led by Kamaka Hepa and Khalil Chapman being all-tournament. So congratulations to Jefferson High School.
Thanks, everybody.
Can we have the Grant Generals come down to the front, please?
Nicely done.
Really fun watching you guys play. It's great watching you guys play. Awesome.
Go Generals. Nicely done. Congrats. Congrats. Pardon? No, to Washington.
Congratulations.
I'm with the winners though. Right? Congrats.
Congratulations.
Hey, Ray, when I announce it, can you handle this? Congratulations. I don't know where they are. I'll announce it. Okay. So, So in terms of Grant High School, they had a record of 25-4 this year. They had a tremendous season. When I think about their season, I think of unprecedented because of the 1, 2, 3, but I also think about persistence and perseverance. Grant, actually 3 of their losses came to Jefferson by a total of 5 points, 6 points total. They lost to Jefferson 3 times by a total of 6 points combined. But more importantly, as Grant Generals would say, we won the one that counted the most. Correct? All right. So Grant had a great job, great season. Coach Key did a tremendous job of keeping the kids together. The other word I would use is trust the process. Coach had a plan. He stayed with it, came to fruition after 3 years, and they won a state championship. I'd like to also, before I recognize individual players, just give a shout out to Principal Carol Campbell, who I think is a phenomenal principal and did a great job of helping put this together, including hired Coach Key. So, Principal Campbell, good decision. I say that because I was a part of that committee and we had some deep discussion, so we made a good decision. And then their athletic director, Ray, who, believe it or not, bought these T-shirts a month before the state tournament that the kids have on, and confidence that they will win. So to Ray and his confidence, good job, Ray. I'd like to, 3 days? It sounded better, 30 days sounded better, Ray. I left a 0. Also like to acknowledge Ty Rankin, Kelton Samore, and Aaron Deloney for tremendous play at the state tournament and being named all tournament. So congratulations to you guys for that. The school board and district athletic office has individual certificates for each and one of you. We'll give you those, Ray will give you those. But in honor of, you read? Okay. We have 2 things. So in honor of your success, the school board and district athletics would like to acknowledge you with a certificate going to your trophy case, and then the board has a proclamation for you that will be read.
At this time, I'd like to ask Director Kunsdam to read the proclamation.
All right. It was really fun watching you guys play. We have this proclamation in your honor. Whereas the Grant basketball team was led by head coach Robert Key and assistant coaches Anthony Orr, Michael Kafori, Russell Millage, Babek, Zol Fahari Azar, and team captains Aaron Deloney, Kelton Samore, and Damon Hickok. And whereas they went into the state championship with a 22-win, 4-loss record and went 2 games to advance to the championship game. And whereas the Grant Generals prevailed in a hard-fought competitive game with a final score of 63-62. And whereas we recognize not only the coaches, the team captains, and the entire team for their outstanding performance, it is fitting to also recognize the community as a whole for supporting the Portland Interscholastic League. Therefore, the Portland Public Schools Board of Education do hereby recognize the Grant High basketball team for winning Oregon's 2018 6A State Basketball Championship.
We're definitely gonna have to close the ends in. Bring it in.
Yeah, this is a moment of truth.
Carol.
Clap it up, stand in front of me. You know, they don't have to see Dr. Let's open it up. Open it for you, man.
Okay. One more. Great, thank you very much.
Take the right one, huh?
No, I'm done. So the PIL has a long and proud tradition of athletics. A group of PIL alums, myself included, and Marshall Haskins, who's also a PIL alum, recently created a new entity, the PIL Foundation, to support teams and student athletes in the PIL. As its inaugural action, the PIL Foundation has committed to purchase for each of the teams a state playoff banner for their gyms to mark each of their accomplishments. So to all the PIL playoff teams and the Grant champions, way to go, way to represent, and congratulations.
Chair, I'd just like to make a comment, which is it was really incredible to be at those games and see all the community support. The Child Center was absolutely packed to the gills with a lot of alumni from all of our schools. It was such a community happening, so I hope we keep it going.
True, true. Even the day games, it was great. So I'm just going to briefly, I'm going to skip an agenda item. It's the board agenda and the roadmap. We're a little bit behind schedule, so I'm going to go right into some of our readings. I'm going to come back after the public comment to the roadmap agenda item. So the board policies. Tonight we have revisions to 3 board policies to consider and vote on, and 1 policy to amend and advance in the process, and also an update on an outstanding policy. Our first second reading is going to be the investment and cash management policy. A first reading was held on the proposed policy on February 27th, 2017. After 21 days of being open for public comment and receiving none, the board is ready to vote on the investment cash management policy. Director Moore, as the chair of the Finance, Audit, and Operations Committee, would you like to make any comments about the policy and provide a recommendation to the board on this resolution? Pardon? No, this is the cash management.
I gave a little spiel at the first reading of this. This is a very minor technical revision to the existing policy. The most important revision is that it raises the amount of money for the cash on hand, and otherwise it continues the existing policy. And the FAO committee unanimously recommended approval.
Great, thank you. The board will now consider resolution number 5616, resolution to adopt the cash management policy 8.20.010. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Director Anthony and seconded by Director Rosen. Ms. Houston, is there any public comment on resolution 5616? Is there any board discussion on this? I should note that Director Bailey obviously is absent this evening, and so is our student representative. So our votes will be all with just 6 members. So no board discussion. The board will now vote on resolution 5616. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Are there any abstentions? Resolution 5616 is approved by a 6-0 vote, and Representative Tran is absent. Thank you, board members. So next, we have a first reading. First reading was held on the diploma policy revision relating to veterans diplomas. The first reading was held on February 27th, 2017. After 21 days of being open for public comment and receiving none, the board is ready to vote on diploma policy revision relating to veterans. Director Esparza Brown, as the chair of the Teaching and Learning Committee, would you like to make some comments and provide a recommendation?
Sure. This resolution responds to the 2017 House Bill on 2220, removing certain requirements for veterans to meet prior to receiving a high school diploma. So these young people left high school in service of our country and sacrificed much in the name of freedom. So after their service, though, many veterans were unable to return to finish their high school for various reasons. So in recognition of their outstanding contributions, this resolution is one gesture of our gratitude for their service. We also did some cleanup in the resolution by taking out prior year diploma requirements. This is the second reading, and the board leadership, the committee, recommends that we approve this.
Thank you, Director Esparza Brown. The board will now consider resolution number 5617, resolution to amend board policy 4.20.042, diploma requirements. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Director Anthony and seconded by Director Esparza Brown. Ms. Houston, is there any public comment on resolution 5617?
There is not.
Is there any board discussion? The board will now vote on resolution 5617. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Any abstentions? Resolution 5616 is approved by a 6-0 vote, with Student Representative Tran being absent this evening. So the third policy that we have under consideration tonight is the naming of school district property. A first reading was held on the proposed naming school district property policy on February 27th, 2017. After 21 days being open for public comment, the board is now ready to vote on the naming school district property policy. So I want to provide some background on the policy changes that we're considering tonight. In September, the district received a formal complaint regarding the use of the word Quakers as the Franklin High School mascot. The complainant asked the superintendent to review the original decision, and the superintendent found that further policy review was necessary regarding naming policies for all aspects of schools in Portland. This issue was referred to the Board Policy and Governance Committee, and the committee has worked on this for several months. The existing policy actually is quite comprehensive and fairly thorough, but there are some gaps that needed to be closed and updating that needed to be done to make it better and more reflective of our values as a school community. The Policy and Governance Committee, I'm the chair of it. Director Rosen and Director Moore also serve on the committee, recommended a series of changes to the policy. And the changes, just I want to summarize them so that we have that on the record, is that we clarified that provisions of this policy apply to mascots and related images and symbols. In the criteria for evaluating names, we've specifically added language that, quote, all consideration must reflect our commitment to eliminating systemic discrimination and its impact on student learning and educational activities. In addition, we've added that in the criteria for evaluating names, names shall not be a person, location, or character whose primary identification is of a religious nature or be a name of a religious group or members. We've clarified the process for naming when 2 or more schools are merged and what is the process for renaming and waiving the fiscal impact statement, and that might be relevant this fall when we open some new middle schools. We, for renamings, it discusses a deliberative process that should not be done in haste, and indicates that such decisions must take into account the district's focus on eliminating systemic discrimination and its impact on student learning and educational activities. It also specifies an exemption to the fiscal impact statement requirement when the party can show that the change is being made to address discrimination. And finally, the board has the ultimate authority to determine if the criteria for naming or renaming has been satisfied. So that's a summary of the changes to this policy. So we're going to vote on the second reading tonight on those policy changes. After after we vote on those policy changes, there's going to be 2 additional items that, amendments that are going to be put on the table and introduced that will then be open for a 21-day comment period. And these are ones that aren't actually related to the issues that were sort of foundational to the complaint, but other issues that came up as we reviewed the policy.
So can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Point of
Go ahead.
clarification on process. So why would we not just have a first reading again of the policy with the amendments, which seems to be much more clear for the public, rather than having a second reading of the original policy and a first reading and a subsequent second reading of the amendments, which is a bit confusing?
So so we've had the current first read policy with the changes have been posted for 21 days. And I'll go back to, this is an issue that was raised in September, and we, as a complaint process, and it went all the way through the complaint process, we reached an agreement with the complainants to suspend the deadlines so that we could work on this policy. And they graciously agreed to suspend to a time certain the timeline. So we thought it would be, and as the chair of the committee, I thought we should advance the policy, which goes to the heart of what the complaint was about. And the 2 other issues have merit, and they just were introduced later in the process. So we're going to adopt the policy we're going to vote on the policy that we first read, and then we'll have the second reading after people have an opportunity to comment on the amendments at the next meeting.
So we're then going to be in a position of deliberating on a complaint that pertains to the policy without having had the opportunity to consider the policy as a whole and adopt the policy.
Well, no, we're not. We haven't yet scheduled the bringing the complaint back to the board.
Okay.
So we will fully adopt the policy before we have a vote on when we bring the suspended appeal back to the board. So the policy work will be completely done by that time.
That's good. It seems to me that we should tonight consider the policy, go back to a first reading of the whole policy, integrating the proposed amendments, so we're addressing it in one fell swoop, other than the bifurcated process.
It's just a judgment call, and because of the length of time that this is actually a multi-year process the complainants have had and gone through, so as an attempt to move the process along. So it's just a call by the chair on process. It could be, I consulted with the general counsel, and either avenue was appropriate to take, and so as the chair, I'm moving the second reading of the policy.
But just help me make sure that I understand something. How does this move the process along? Because I think you just said that we won't consider the complaint until we have actually heard the whole policy with the amendments.
It takes action on the main section of the policy that is at the central part of the complaint. It can be done either way, and again, I consulted with the general counsel and also one of the other amendment carriers. So Director Moore had an amendment. It wasn't completed by the time we voted it out of committee. So we moved ahead with the policy so that we are moving ahead with the work of the board.
So it's just a little persnickety, but I'm a little concerned about establishing a precedent, because it is confusing to do it this way. Do you have a recommendation, Ms. Large? I know that it's legal and it's within our, but do you have a recommendation? I understand either is technically acceptable.
I think either is acceptable, and they've been walked through. I think it's the judgment of the board about which path it wants to proceed.
Okay.
But I think both certainly work.
Okay. do I have a motion? So Director Rosen moves and Director Anthony seconds the motion to adopt Resolution 5616. Ms. Hewson, is there any public comment on Resolution 5616?
5615?
I'm sorry, 5615.
Yes, we have two. We have Clifford Carlson and Mia Pisano.
Hey, first off, I'd like to thank you for having me and allowing me to give my perspective as a student. My name is Cliff Carlson. I'm a senior at Franklin High School, and I'm here representing our Student Senate, which is essentially a group of club leaders brought together to convey to faculty the ideas and concerns of the students. Being that I'm here on behalf of the student body, and I'm not necessarily here to give my own opinions as an individual, I'd like to express that we do not all agree on whether Quakers should remain as our mascot name. Many see the apparent religious affiliation as an entanglement of church and state, while many others see the mascot as too much a part of the school's identity to just erase. There is a consensus, however, in saying that if you decide the mascot must change, our new name should be picked via student vote. Say what you will about Quakers, but it is certainly unusual, and I believe that has value. One of our biggest worries with this process is that you, the faculty, and maybe a few student representatives will walk into a room and come out to tell us that we're now some generic creature like the Wildcats. That would leave out the many voices of people who make Franklin what it is. A student vote is the only way to ensure that the people making the decision are the people who will eventually be affected by it. Obviously, any vote cast for something that doesn't meet the already established guidelines regarding profanity or otherwise offensive content would be immediately disqualified. And even with these conditions met, you might be worried that students would choose something goofy or meaningless. Well, in 1986, that same so-called worst-case scenario happened at UC Santa Cruz when students voted overwhelmingly in favor of changing their mascot from the sea lions, a moniker selected by faculty without significant student involvement, to the banana slugs. Yeah. Since then, the school's mascot has become an immense point of pride among both students and alumni, and has received widespread positive publicity, including being on ESPN's list of top 10 college mascots. Franklin's alumni will always have been Quakers, no matter what happens with this vote. But because current and future students are the ones who will have to live with a change, it might as well be a change that they are comfortable with. Allowing us to pick our own mascot is not only the fair thing to do, but it's also the best way to find something that will excite people. Students are most likely to have the creative and relevant ideas, and no matter what they pick, students will be far more supportive of a choice that they are involved in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Superintendent, Directors, thank you very much for having me. My name is Mia Pisano, P-I-S-A-N-O, and as you know, I am very, very proud to be a parent of a Franklin High School alum and a current student, and I'm also proud to be a Quaker by virtue of my religious faith, not my affiliation with Franklin High School. I am here to urge the board to approve this revision to the policy on naming school district property. This proposal does strengthen the district's commitment to eliminating systemic discrimination and provides a more accessible process for addressing issues of discrimination in naming of Portland Public Schools property. I also am just delighted to support wholeheartedly the students' request to be a part of any renaming process that would move forward at Franklin High School. The current students are the future alumni, and in this and in so much that we see right now, the students of today are ready to move forward with their courage, their integrity, their energy for positive change. And I will be so encouraged that Franklin students will, if the board chooses to move forward on this revision, have an opportunity to represent themselves into the future in their future identity as Franklin alumni. So thank you very much for considering this amendment, and I urge you to approve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Is there any board discussion on the merits of the resolution or and the changes?
I'm going to vote yes based on the merits of the resolution, but I am concerned about just not clean governance and setting a precedent. I think we should really try to pay attention to that moving forward, that when we bring something forward, we have all the amendments, we consider it in total so that it's easier for the public to track and just more clean. Yeah, just on that comment, I would just say that we have one thing about our policy is policy should be continuously evolving, and while this set of amendments, even the ones we adopt next week or the previous policies, we consider that we should always look to them that they are potentially going to evolve with time. So I don't think anything's set in stone. So just in terms of the discussion, I wanted to just briefly comment on the process moving forward. So we would be bringing back at a certain point to the board the appeal of the complaint. And then assuming there is a change, there is a very clear process laid out in the administrative directive of a renaming policy. And I want to sort of assure Cliff Carlson that there is a role for students, and the process is organized by the communications department. And I've already had a conversation with Stephanie Cameron about how we make that an inclusive process and transparent, so that all those individuals who feel passionate about Franklin High School and its legacy have an opportunity to participate in that process. So we welcome students' engagement in that. Is there any other board discussion? So the board will now vote on Resolution 5615. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Any abstentions? The resolution 5615 is approved by a 6-0 vote, with Student Representative Tram being absent tonight. So now on to the amendments, and part of the discussion about the amendments, at a certain point they were considered non-substantive, and it was a close call. So because we felt they were substantive changes, we're going to first read them tonight and then vote on them after the 21-day comment period. The amendments were included in the board packet and posted online. I'd like to ask Vice Chair Moore to introduce her -1 amendments, and then I will introduce an amendment on behalf of an issue that Director Bailey raised. Director Moore?
So my amendment is to Section 4, Gifts, Paragraph 1. And the amendment reads, the board acknowledges that it has the authority to accept monetary or in-kind donations from individuals and entities. In exceptional circumstances, consideration may be given to naming locations within a school or non-school facility for a significant gift as determined by the board in consultation with the superintendent. That last sentence is the one that has a couple of revisions to it. And the revisions are, taking away the possibility of naming a new school or non-school facility in return for a gift, and then any naming of a location within a school or non-school facility will be done in consultation with the superintendent. The rest of that paragraph remains unchanged.
Any questions or discussion about Director Moore's amendment? So the second amendment is labeled the omnibus amendment, or the Director Bailey's amendment in a different packet. There were two issues that he flagged, and Director Bailey noted that the criteria relating to the community's role in a renaming was vague and a subjective standard. So this amendment clarifies that the community's input will inform the board's deliberation and decisions. It also makes clear that we're waiving the fiscal impact statement and requirement of paying for a name change when the change is based on discrimination. So given that Director Bailey is traveling, I'm introducing this as the omnibus amendment to the policy. Any questions or discussion about that amendment? Okay, so both of those amendments will be posted as required and open for public comment. And assuming we receive public comment and we don't have further changes, we'll be voting on a second reading of those amendments at the next board meeting. Okay, so thank you, board members. Three policies. Our next issue we have before us is an introduction of an amendment, and this is an amendment to the non-discrimination anti-harassment policy revision. At the February 27th board meeting, we had a first reading of revisions to the non-discrimination anti-harassment policy. Since then, board leadership, in consultation with the committee chair, Constam, have drafted a clarifying amendment to the first read policy. I'm going to ask Director Constam, the chair of the Legislative and Intergovernmental Committee, to introduce and explain the rationale for the amendment. Director Constam?
Excuse me, but I don't think I have that amendment, but I'm happy to explain the rationale. Thank you. Just what I was looking for. I don't need to read it. So basically what we are bringing forward is just to make clear in the policy that there is a right of confidentiality for complainants. And this was something that was already codified in the administrative directive that was attached to the policy, but it just wasn't made clear in the policy, and it was an area of some concern in the community, and in fact a deeply held value, I think, of our board. And so we wanted to make sure that that was transparent to the public, that that was part of it. Do you want me to read this, or?
Maybe just read the one sentence that was added. It's the May.
It's just all complaints regarding sexual harassment and sexual violence shall go to the Title IX coordinator. Complaints may be made anonymously, and that was not in the original language of the amendment. So that's the meat of it. Thanks.
So it's just adding a sentence, just to clarify. Thank you, Director Constam. Do I have a motion to adopt the amendment to the non-discrimination anti-harassment policy?
Second.
Been moved by Director Esparza-Brown and seconded by Director Anthony. Is there any board discussion on this amendment? Okay, the board will now vote on the amendment. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Any abstentions? The amendment is approved by a 6-0 vote, with Student Representative Tran voting, not being present. So the amended non-discrimination anti-harassment policy will be considered, this will be considered a reread first reading at this board meeting. The amended policy is will be posted for 21 days, and at our April 10th board meeting will be scheduled for a second reading vote. Thank you, board members. So the last piece of business in our board policies tonight is an update on our second reading, the public access to district records. So this originally had been scheduled for a vote this evening, so I want to provide an update about why we're not having a vote on it. And I'm going to read it because I want to provide the context in which why we are at this position where we are right at this moment. So as background, the board started work on its revised public records policy last summer in an effort to increase accountability and transparency, build trust with the broader community, and comply with revisions in state law. We had a first reading of this policy on September 12th, 2017. We were in mediation with the Portland Association of Teachers regarding our collective bargaining agreement with them, and work on the policy was suspended until after contract ratification due to PAT's assertion that a change in the policy at that point in bargaining was an unfair labor practice. Once the contract was ratified, there was a second first reading at the February 27th board meeting to incorporate substantive changes that had been recommended by members of the media and board members and community members. The district shared the required first reading of this policy, as is our practice, with representative of our employee groups, and started a 21-day public comment period. So that was back on February 27th. Ordinarily, the March 20th board meeting would be the meeting that we would consider public comment that had been submitted and have a vote on the second reading. On February 27th, the Portland Association of Teachers made a demand to bargain, which they are allowed to do under Oregon's collective bargaining law. This starts a process not to exceed 90 days for the district to consider issues that PAT has raised about the policy and bargain to the extent required by law. There has been staff-level bargaining about PAT's concerns, and I expect at the board's Policy and Governance Committee meeting this week, there'll be a report on the progress in bargaining. We will not have a vote tonight on the second reading, as we are still working through the process for policy adoption. We'll continue to provide updates on where we are within the required process. If there are any recommended amendments to the current revised policy, the committee will forward recommendations to the board for consideration. We'll have a vote on the revised policy at a future meeting within the allowable timelines. So that's the update on where we are with public records. So 5 policies gone through tonight. Superintendent Guerrero, do you want to do your report, or would you rather wait till after public comment? You can choose. We're pretty
happy to go now.
Pardon?
Happy to go now.
Okay, please.
Good evening, directors. Congratulations again to our student athletes and coaches on their winning seasons. I enjoyed, and I know many of you also did, these very exciting final games. And congrats to our Grant Generals. Speaking of Grant Magazine, our student journalists for the 5th year in a row have won the National Gold Award for student publications. Student and staff members traveled to New York to receive their award and participate in a national student journalism conference. I wanted to make sure and acknowledge their accomplishment as well. On March 13th, I had the opportunity to address several hundred business leaders, leaders from other work sectors, and students at the annual Pacific Work Alliance breakfast held at the Convention Center. It was a great opportunity to connect with leaders who are in positions to help our students explore possible career paths, offer internships, and possibly become mentors to many of our students. Over the course of that day, estimated more than 6,000 high school students traveled by school bus to the Oregon Convention Center to take part in this career fair. Students had the opportunity to talk to job recruiters and participate in some practical hands-on career trying, hooking up utility lines, operating an industrial nail gun, using high-tech medical equipment, and just kind of exploring what some of these careers and tools look like. Just got back from trip to DC along with several fellow board members. I won't say a lot about it because I know we're going to have a formal report out, but we attended the Council of Great City Schools legislative conference at the nation's capital. So we had a chance to interact with congressional staff on some key legislative topics, including school safety, and I know you'll hear more details in a minute or later in the program. March 14th, I wanted to make sure and say a little bit about that. As folks are aware, schools across the district participated in a range of activities. One, to honor the victims of the mass shootings in Parkland, Florida, and to advocate for safe, violence-free schools. Overall, this turned out to be a very successful and instructive day in the school district. It generated a lot of student-led advocacy and organized activity and some very important discussions. There was a lot of media coverage, both nationally and locally, for the most part positive, included a lot of interviews with our students, covered Governor Brown, who joined us on the field at Roosevelt High, along with many of us who were there to support their organized activity. There was a lot of really positive footage, some aerial shots of some of our elementary students forming rainbows and peace signs, and it just turned out to be a really good day in the way we envisioned it to be a teachable moment. We did have some middle school students who elected to leave school grounds on that day, but just so families know, we did have our Emergency Operations Center up, and we were able to keep families, staff, and Police Bureau informed in real time, but all of our students did end up returning safely for their afternoon classes. So thank you to the many staff, our teachers, and families who made this a positive day. We were able to publish a reflection on the day, board members and myself, if you haven't had a chance to read it. That's also posted on our district's website as well. Speaking of democratic activities, on that same day, March 14th, in addition to all the Safe Schools activity, nearly 700 of our high school students and staff traveled to Seattle to see a performance of the Broadway musical hit Hamilton. This was made possible by a generous grant from the Harold and Arlene Schnitzer Care Foundation. I want to thank Director Constam, Senior Director of Strategic Partnerships Jonathan Garcia, who joined me in making the pitch to Mr. Jordan Schnitzer, who was very happy and gracious and generous to support this activity that helped make the trip possible, transportation and tickets, etc. And the students didn't just get to watch the musical, they actually had to participate in a curriculum. It had an educational component connected to it. Many of our students were featured sharing some performances that they prepared on stage for the cast of Hamilton, so it was really a unique opportunity. And rather than say anything more about it, I think I'll just stop there and show you a little video clip of the day.
Abby here with the cast of Hamilton. We have some awesome people that we would like you to meet. It is future leaders of the world. Where are they?
Exciting
It's a
morning.
big day.
It's going to be a big day. Gotta get up early for this one. It's like, well, you know, it's the hottest ticket in town, and we're just so excited that, you know, almost 700 of our own high school kids are going to get this opportunity. I'm so proud of you guys getting up so early. We're taking our U.S. government students. I can't think of a better opportunity to make U.S. government come alive than in an opportunity to see Hamilton on stage. And we'll hear all about it when you get back. I know you're going to have a good time.
It's pretty awesome to be able to see how theater education can impact other classrooms, because we know how important it is to get students on their feet and actively involved in their education, and this is a great example of that way to get students involved.
I'm very excited. We've been counting down the days for the last 2 weeks. It touches on a lot of things that the history books don't. And it provides like a fun way to understand what our forefathers went through.
It was early in the morning, but like as we're getting closer and closer, like I'm really stoked. I'm thinking that a lot of students will see just how amazing this is.
More little like split, so there's going to be about 20 of you guys that are going to be like my responsibility.
Honestly, I was really shocked. It's just amazing to learn that you get to go to this big, very, very popular musical.
Are you guys ready for the performance? Coming up next, from Benson Polytechnic High School. Yes. Here we go. Give it up for Tariq Underwood.
I shot a man, but never again. I don't know why he shot into the tree. I'm just going to let it be, because I won the battle between Hamilton and me. Oh man, is this going to haunt me?
These kids all study this era, the same era as Hamilton, and do projects, whether it's a song, poetry, a rap, and get to perform it here on the stage.
I'm really excited to be here to see the show. I've heard so much good stuff about it. We were also asked to prepare some kind of art piece, like a poem or a song.
Stay high. Eli Heighton.
So I wrote a sonnet about the Whiskey Rebellion, so I did some research on it, and it's pretty interesting to me.
Survivors went home, and again, the Constitution upheld. This clash of armies made our political parties.
From Madison High School, how much did you know about the founding era before being part of this production?
I know a lot about each individual. I didn't know a lot about the infighting. Like, I didn't know that Jefferson hated Hamilton so damn much. So like, there's things like that. Those little things, like, I didn't know that stuff.
Yeah. The cast all looks forward to this, the cast and crew. Everybody's so excited about these days because these kids are so on fire.
Just got out of Hamilton and it was amazing.
It was cool, yeah. I liked it. A lot of emotion.
It's fun to see the historical documents that we had to analyze in class like come to life in a modernized way.
I think it was amazing. Like the music, the acting, the whole vibe and the energy was just spectacular.
So when my mother and I heard that Portland Public Schools had a chance to send 750 high school students to Seattle, we jumped at the chance to partner with Portland Public Schools in helping all those kids have the same experience that we were lucky enough to have last year.
Live your life.
So I want to give a big thank you to all of the sponsors that are giving us the tickets to go to this show. There's no words that can express how thankful I am towards them.
And I just want to thank Terry Proctor for putting together that nice little video clip to give us a sense of the day from our communications team. Thank you.
Nice way to end. So we're now on to student and public comment. Before we begin the public comment period, I'd like to review our guidelines. The board thanks the community for taking the time to come tonight to share your perspectives, your concerns, your ideas. We value your input. So it's our responsibility as a board to actively listen with our electronic devices turned off. Board members and the superintendent will not respond to comments or questions during public comments, but our board office will follow up on board-related issues raised during public comment. Guidelines for public comment emphasize respect and consideration of others. Complaints about individual employees should be directed to the superintendent's office as a personnel matter. Presenters will have a total of 3 minutes to share your comments. Please begin by stating your name and spelling your last name for the record. During the first 2 minutes of your testimony, a green light will appear. When you have 1 minute remaining, a yellow light will go on, and when your time is up, the red light will go on, the buzzer will sound, and at that point, we ask you to respectfully conclude your comments. Ms. Hewson, will you please call the first 2 individuals signed up to testify?
Our first 2 speakers are Molly Porter and Marjorie Phillips.
Hello, my name is Molly Porter, P-O-R-T-E-R. First of all, thank you so much for your service to PPS. Our community is grateful for the efforts that you're making in conjunction with our leadership to fix some of the inequities across the district. I know that you all are volunteers, and I'm grateful for your time. I'm here tonight to address the FTE cuts that elementary schools are facing. These cuts will create unsafe learning environments, not to mention that there is no way to foster academic excellence in a classroom of 28 kindergartners or 34 fifth graders. You know this, I know this, we all know this. The foundation for increased graduation rates is laid during the primary grades, and increasing class sizes for these young learners is the opposite of what our students need. At Chapman, we're not even asking that you lower our class size, which would be a reasonable request. We're just asking that you don't increase it. Teachers believed that their class sizes would be held to reasonable numbers. The preliminary decision to march straight past the overage caps and on to the max number of students per grade is inappropriate. I trust every one of you knows that increasing class sizes is bad for students. Paying a teacher more doesn't make that teacher more capable of handling too many students. More importantly, it provides zero benefit for the students. Zero benefit for students. I'm asking you to choose a different course, any course that will provide some benefit to our students. The forecasted numbers at Chapman, which I don't believe to be correct, show 50% of classrooms above the overage cap. I believe a more accurate look at our numbers will prove that 60 to 85% of our classrooms will be above that overage. These numbers are unsafe. Physically and emotionally, our students will suffer. We need more qualified adults in school buildings, not fewer. This community spent a lot of time, energy, and resources 2 years ago trying to create right-sized schools. I would hope that we could invest the same resources in trying to develop right-sized classrooms. Chapman's Ramona campus is slated to lose their secretary. This move creates a dangerous and untenable situation for that building. In my 6 years at Chapman, there has been one lockdown emergency. It occurred at the Ramona. I shudder to imagine how that scenario would have played out without safe staffing. Yet that is the current proposal. Asking for safety in our buildings is a low bar. I know it's complicated, and I know I don't have the full picture, but I do know what is best for our sweet babies, and it is not fewer teachers, larger class sizes, and understaffed campuses. Unassigning paras, raising class sizes, operating a second and currently unnecessary campus, these are things that hurt our students. They drive families that can afford it into private school sector and drive out quality teachers and paras. Every single student deserves to sit in right-sized classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marjorie Phillips. Thank you for this opportunity to testify about an issue that is very important to my family, my community, and I, the future of our children, specifically the future of the children of Applegate Head Start and the families it serves. This is a heartfelt issue for me. I am a grandmother of current Applegate students, and my children have attended PPS Head Start facilities. Head Start programs like these are indispensable to parents in both their affordability and in their geographic practicality. They were for my family, in which all my children who attended are now college educated and 2 on the cusp of master's degrees. The proposed decision to displace the 77 kids and families in the Applegate program, in which many receive free and reduced lunch, will be incredibly burdensome in my opinion, only furthers the process of gentrification in my community, which is not the best interest of my grandchildren and the children of Applegate. Dominoes is an enjoyable game for many adults, but metaphorically, the domino effect of accommodating access families at the expense of displacing pioneer families, which ultimately displaces Applegate and NAIA families, is a cruel game where everybody is toppled. The community involvement process of this change has been troublesome, as well as for Applegate families. Information has trickled down, and it should be free-flowing. Many Applegate parents I've spoken to feel as though displacement is an afterthought in this process, and their voices have not been heard. The only update to Applegate families occurred in December, was focused on pioneer and access families, and mentioned the only informational meeting was to occur in 5 days, and that Head Start will consider their community needs assessment to determine where underserved low-income children live. The community needs assessment, which PPS is required to undertake every 3 years, and to reveal every 2 years after the assessment, is designed to provide data about the location, race, ethnic makeup, and resource needs of Applegate families, among other factors. We have some Applegate families that don't have a stable location because they are homeless. And for some, it would be a burden to take TriMet to Kelly or Vestal. How is their truth validated? Can PPS say that this decision is supported by the current needs assessment? Will this decision likely be supported in a review of that assessment in a few years? Will you provide specifics to Applegate families and the public to demonstrate how your decision is supported by current federal regulations that govern the Head Start program? In short, you can't depend on just census data. You must authentically do outreach and involve Applegate families and kids in your decision. You preach equity. However, your actions with Applegate has been less than equitable. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Our next two speakers are Beth Blumklotz and Gabrielle Mercedes Bolivar.
Good evening. My name is Gabriela Mercedes Bolivar. Good evening, Superintendent, PPS Board of Education, and I should probably add PPS Council. I am a former PPS student, current PPS parent, and current community member. I have made a concerted effort this year to maintain a positive attitude, support the new PPS administration, PPS Board of Education, and your efforts to undo decades of harm to our students as you take substantive action to address decades of inequity and inefficiency. I understand that this is no easy undertaking. It will take time, and it will require valid data to make appropriate, informed decisions that impact our students. I do have several requests and thoughts and perspectives, some that I will share and ask tonight. First, many of our school communities have a history of struggling to receive effective, timely, and transparent communication from the district. It has often resulted in communities feeling like something is being done to us, to our students, to our communities, without consideration of who we are and who our students are in our school buildings. For years, many of our school communities have struggled to have voices heard, concerns addressed, or to receive transparent communication from the district, or to be engaged by BESC staff. This often results in mistrust. I believe intentional engagement, consistent, open, and transparent communication can and will build trust between our school communities and the district. I have an ask. When negative articles are published by local papers about our school communities, Ockley Green, for example, we expect that BESC will defend and support our school community. If the district is aware that a negative article is coming out on a school, get ahead of it. Engage us. We are in this together for our students. Let's find every opportunity to highlight and celebrate them. Everywhere, every day, and every school, we have amazing students. As we celebrate annual increases in our graduation rate, is the district evaluating the root causes? Is it a decrease in students qualifying for direct certification? Have the proficiency-based grading systems impacted graduation rates? Are students submitting an alternate portfolio to graduate? And if yes, what are the demographics? How are we tracking access to programming, student schedules, supports, and how are we analyzing this data? How are we tracking the student success and readiness for career and college? Families have voiced and reported concerns that their students are graduating with a PPS diploma and stuck in minimum wage jobs. Does PPS have the data on student career and or college success post-graduation? This brings me to my last question for the evening. What students have access to AP, IB, or PCC in high school? How is this determined? What are the district costs incurred for AP, IB, and PCC, and how is the district determining which schools and which students in these schools have access? Are there inequities in access? Are we tracking university preference for transferable credits? For example, do universities place greater value on PCC, AP, or IB classes when reviewing students' admissions? I appreciate your commitment to weather the uphill battle of addressing years of inequitable school funding, staffing, programming, program placement, enrollment balancing, and boundaries. I can't imagine the task you have before you and believe that with clear, consistent, transparent communication and engagement, we can build a district that supports all students and communities. I'd also like to shout out to Marshall Haskins because he's been an amazing athletic director.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Beth Blumklotz, last name Blumklotz. I'm a proud school bus driver for Portland Public Schools. We've been without a contract since June 30th, 2017. All we want is a fair and equitable contract, which of course includes a livable wage. Even though your representatives showed up to several negotiations unprepared and declared that we should be thankful we have benefits, we agreed to come to the contract negotiation table one more time, which will be this Friday, March 23rd, at the request of our PPS COO, who feels confident that we can come to an agreement, and we appreciate his efforts. Let me tell you, we want to come back here and thank you. We are hoping that you have seen more of our value these past 7 months since attending and speaking at these school board meetings, and all that we do for our special education students. However, the longer you delay offering a livable wage, the more we're coming together. Portland Public pays new hires $21.32 an hour, and shortly after $23.69 an hour for truck and food service drivers. However, for your school bus drivers, who you also receive 70% back on each dollar for having special education students, you offer us and want us to accept $16.74 per hour. We are encouraging you to ask the district and its representatives to at least pay the same that you pay our other drivers. Special education school bus drivers transport the most important commodity that Portland Public Schools serves, our children. We actually have drivers who drive in the summers delivering food and then come back to transport our children for the school year. They don't come back for the pay, obviously, but they return because they love what they do. School bus drivers transport students with autism, mild, moderate, or complete deaf or blindness, learning disabilities, mental retardation, physical impairments, speech, language, or mental impairments, emotional traumas. Our students require attention and assistance getting on and off the bus. We don't just drive, we make every effort to meet their needs. For the 2016-17 school year, 17 PPS school bus drivers transported 603 students with special needs, 945,350 miles. Are you listening to us? The minimum credentials required to transport children to and from school here is having a CDL, medical card that verifies when we pass a physical, first aid CPR, ODE school bus driver certificate. We are required to have professional development, ongoing driver safety trainings, random drug tests. In all fairness, we think we should get paid the same as those who transport food. On the menu this week, chicken nuggets, apple and celery salad. Are you saying that meatloaf, hamburgers, and hot dogs are more valuable than our children?
Amen.
We are not against our colleagues earning a livable wage. We are not against our colleagues earning a livable wage. We just want the same, and we want compensation that is commensurate with the responsibility that we shoulder every day transporting the most important, our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our last two speakers, Steve Buell and Amy Estep.
I just want to point out that I'm wearing red this evening to support Pioneer. My name's Steve Buell, B-U-E-L, and school board members and superintendent. Last June, the school board passed a resolution instructing the superintendent to create a comprehensive ESL plan, including an analysis of intensive English language instruction for older children. The deadline to report to the board was last February 1st. There has been no report. The idea behind intensive English language instruction is to give older immigrant children enough background in English so they can enter our middle or high schools and participate in their own education. Right now, we often just drop them into classes required for graduation, even if they speak no English. The predictable results are atrocious. While we have some daily ESL instruction, it does not include intensive English language instruction. Setting up a voluntary program where we teach a good deal of English in a short time frame, which allows all our older immigrant children to have a sensible English language foundation on which to build, makes a lot of sense. Children are taught English throughout the world. Did you happen to watch the recent Olympics? Many foreign athletes did interviews in English. English, the closest thing in the world to universal language, is taught to millions of people in countries all over the world. It seems strange that in Portland, one of the most progressive cities in America, we can't teach enough English so children who we have a responsibility to educate can get by in our schools. Part of the problem is that the parents of these children aren't generally going to come down to the school board or to the superintendent's office to complain. If they ever did, they would say their children need to learn English and to have a real chance to get an education and fit into a society where English is a must for continuing their education or becoming a professional. Actually, we already have our own staff who are complaining what we are doing is neither sensible or working. There are 4 outstanding Office of Civil Rights complaints about our ESL program. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying such things as sheltered instruction or QTEL should be replaced by intensive English language instruction. But I am saying that without intensive English instruction, there is not enough time for older children to learn what they need to learn to be successful in our schools. They must learn English. We must teach it to them. And I have another thing. Back in 1979 and 80, I got a resolution passed that said that we needed to have in our entryways in our schools signs that said welcome and please and thank you. And we do. If you look around, there's a lot of them are still that left from that particular resolution. And what we had before that was just pretty much you must report to the office. It was and we have kind of in a way the same type of thing here in this building. We don't have any really welcoming signs, and so I brought one for you. I know I'm over the time, but I bought this.
You know the rules.
And I thought it would be good to have in here. However, there's a problem. Okay. There's a problem in that this says, partway down, immigrants and refugees are welcome. So
Mr. Buell, your time is up.
Before I give it to you.
Mr. Buell, your time is up.
Yep.
Will you please yield to Amy, please?
No, it's fine. I'm done.
Great. Are you going to leave that with maybe with Ms. Houston, please? Go ahead, please.
Good evening. My name is Amy Estep, E-S-T-E-P. This silence represents your treatment of all the people in red shirts behind me when we have raised concerns and questions about dismantling the Pioneer program to inferior buildings that do not meet the needs of our students. It's time for the silence to end. Since November 28th, we have attended 8 school board meetings. We have written countless letters of concerns to all of you. We have been in the Oregonian, the Portland Tribune, on OPB, on the TV. 7 different Pioneer staff have made public comments. 3 teachers, a therapeutic intervention coach, a paraeducator, our secretary, our PE teacher, and right now, a licensed clinical social worker who's worked for Pioneer for 15 years. We have all testified that we will not be able to keep ourselves and our students safe in Applegate and Rice. We have all stated that it is discriminatory to place students with disabilities, students of color, students living in poverty, into buildings that don't meet their needs in order for students who are talented and gifted. We have all said that it's not fair to solve PPS's school building issues on the backs of students with significant disabilities, the most vulnerable students, and our youngest early education students. After all this advocacy, we have still yet to be addressed by all of you regarding our concerns. Again, it's time for you to end your silence. It's time for the school board to get involved. So I wonder, what is getting in your way? What is getting in your way of doing the right thing? Is it that you don't want to disagree with your new superintendent, somebody you hired and have high aspirations for? Is it about politics? Is it about saving face? Do you truly believe that talented and gifted kids deserve a better school building, a better school experience than students with disabilities, students who are dealing with childhood trauma and neglect? Is it that you're embarrassed at this point in time that you haven't stopped the injustice that took place earlier in the process? As you can see, we don't understand what's going on. We don't understand. It seems like there's something that has other to do with what's best for students. But we are here to tell you it's not too late. Every day at Pioneer, we help students learn how to repair harm when they have physically or emotionally hurt another person. We teach our students how to engage in the restorative justice process in order to teach them a different way of being in the world. We teach them to take responsibility when they have made a mistake, and we teach them how to make things right. We practice and role model forgiveness every day with our students. After being punched, kicked, bit, told to F off, said nasty words about our family, things they're going to do to us, we continue to relate and accept our students with unconditional positive regard so that we can move forward and teach them math, language arts, science, and social skills. It's not too late for you, Mr. Guerrero, and for you, the school board, to engage in this restorative justice process with Pioneer. Please do the right thing. Let Pioneer stay home.
Thank you, everyone, for coming and commenting this evening. I think we're going to have some other presentations tonight that will address some of the issues that have been raised, whether it's the school staffing model or some of our program transitions. So at this time, I'm going to, the next on the agenda, we're going to have the middle school openings and updates on programs transitions, and then after that, we're going to go back to the board work plan before we go to the charters. So Superintendent Guerrero, I'm going to ask you to provide the update, or call on the staff who's going to provide the update.
Sure. I'm going to ask our Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Yvonne Curtis, is going to walk us through it. We have a... Dr. Yvonne. We have a PowerPoint. Dr. Curtis and various staff are going to be providing tonight's update similar to our last one. We have a short deck we'll be sharing this evening, but I'm going to let her sort of facilitate the presentation.
Okay. So Chair Brim Edwards and directors, and Superintendent Guerrero, we will have several staff members come up and give a little more detail to what's on the slide. We're going to move very quickly because this is just ongoing work. We're just giving you little snippets each month that we come. Sometimes we'll have a lot to share. Sometimes it'll be a little bit because there's a lot going on and a lot is moving. So we'll share what's gone on this last month, starting with Cameron from Family Engagement. Yeah.
Good evening, Superintendent and board members. My name is Cameron Vaughn, and I am here this evening on behalf of Natasha Butler, Harriet Tubman Middle School Planning Principal, who is attending a conference at the moment. We're pleased to announce that the open house at Harriet Tubman Middle School several weeks ago was attended by approximately 400 visitors. Future students and their families had the chance to roam the halls, look at classrooms, and get a sneak preview of their school before the roofing project commences. People were also able to ask questions of the district transportation staff, as well as staff from Safe Routes to Schools. It was fun to see people pouring through the doors and kids excitedly talking about the new spaces and faces that they were going to have next year. Principal Butler is approximately 85% staffed and has met with middle school teachers to discuss scheduling and visioning for the next year. She has been working with feeder school teachers to finalize student events for April due to last month's snow cancellations of student field trips to Harriet Tubman Middle School and SEI. We've contacted Portland Parks and Recreation to secure Lillis Albina Park for the grand opening and ribbon cutting at the end of August, and we've begun planning for the Harriet Tubman Alumni Gala and an end-of-year barbecue. Principal Butler has ongoing meetings with parent volunteers to discuss ways they can contribute to Harriet Tubman community in preparation for the fall opening. Principal Butler met with Maurice Lucas Foundation and Sun School providers to discuss before and after school supports for students. Band instruments, library, and curriculum books are being ordered, and we're in the process of developing a separate website just for the school. Our last community meeting was held on Thursday, March 15th, where presentations were made by Chief Academic Officer Valentino and Chief Operating Officer Vincent. Our next community meeting will be held at Irvington School on April 16th from 6 to 8 p.m. As always, a light dinner will be served, and there will be childcare and Spanish translation services available, and all are welcome.
Thank you. And next we have Kathleen Elwood, who will speak about Roseway Heights.
Yes, happy to be here. The last 2 times I've been asked to speak, I've been at community meetings, and all that community engagement has actually paid off. At our last community gathering this last Wednesday, we had over 200 people attend, community members, students, teachers, and parents, which was very exciting for the staff and for families. And we had them do the largest walking gallery, if you're familiar with that strategy in teaching. Where basically over 200 people were walking around the gym to look at facts that were posted about Roseway Heights Middle School and things that we know will be in place next year. And to replicate that activity, we're not doing the activity, but I do have the signs up around the lobby for anyone who's interested in just learning more than I can share during this brief time. What led to that community or level of community engagement were partnerships with our community partners. We partner with nonprofit groups such as IRCO, Latino Network, and other folks who already have connections to our families. And we've also done a lot of outreach and gone to our parents, not just expected them to come to the school to get them engaged. And so we feel that that is a reason we have that level of engagement. We also have a very excited and wonderful staff coming on board. We were able to set up academic teams who will share students. And what's lovely about those teams is that each team has teachers from 3 of the 4 feeder schools on the team. It has a range of teaching experience, and it also has at least 1 staff person of color. Which was really important for us because our school will be only 35% white, so having those staff members spread throughout our student population was very important. We have a lot of upcoming engagements going on. We have parent and teacher committees that are working on scheduling, student events to get the students to know one another. And we are focusing instead on larger gatherings for the students, we're looking at smaller gatherings where the students have opportunities to do team building and actually build relationships with one another while getting to know their new teachers. So we're really excited about the upcoming work. We're going to continue working on the student events and the community events. And the other thing we're doing, the one last thing, is we are also aligning all of our, as much curriculum as possible to Madison High School. We will have a STEAM program, both arts and technology and engineering. And currently, we're setting up meetings with our staff and their Madison High School counterparts so that we can create an aligned grade 6 through grade 12 program for theater, for music, for technology, for engineering, and a number of other areas. So we're doing that as much as possible. So,
great.
And check out the signs if you want to know more.
Thank you. And next we have Eileen Isham, who will speak about Head Start.
Good evening. I'm Eileen Isham, Director of the Head Start program. Currently, of the 77 children, 33 of our Applegate kids are what we call returners. They all have a family advocate, and the family advocate is working closely with the family already to give them their first choice of a site nearby. So we will be moving into Fabian, 2 classrooms, which is about 2.5 miles away, and then Clarendon, we have 6 classroom options there, and that's around 3 miles away. But if there is another pre-K that is closer to them, we're helping them find those, either through Portland Public, Albina, and of course the Vestal site. After spring break, we have plans to do a walkthrough to see what kind of upgrades need to happen. We have to make sure we have sinks in the classroom and those kinds of things, because we do feed our children in the classroom family style. At Applegate, we are going to visit Vestal. I told you that. We also went and visited Kelly Center, where we have secured a classroom for the early Head Start that's Native American, and our PPS Head Start that's also Native American classroom. We've secured 2 classrooms next door to each other at the Kelly Center, so we're excited about that. The funders of that program is the OCDC. They're the people that are actually funding it, and then Neighborhood House will provide the services, and we're working with them about facility upgrades that they're willing to pay for. Tonight is our Parent Policy Council meeting, and a report will be given out to them, and Deborah Berry's actually covering that meeting for me tonight. So thank you.
I have a question about, I have a quick question about Head Start. So moving the Applegate kids into Fabian, Clarendon, are you looking at a net loss in the number of Head Start kids that would be served next year because they're moving into some of our other existing programs, or we will still have the same number?
So
of
we
slots?
have to serve 819 is the amount of children that we serve, and there are children that, like I said, are returners, so we will make sure they get a spot. So at this point, we haven't lost any of them. We'll find them a place. The other kiddos are going on to kindergartens, and we also help them find a kindergarten in their neighborhood or a focus option school. So that's a big part of our transition into kindergarten.
Applegate's not going anywhere. Those kids get to stay right there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I skipped this slide. I didn't mean to. So Ockley Green, Paula McCullough, our interim principal, will share the update.
Good evening, and thank you to the board and Antonio's office for the continuing support you have provided to the Ockley Green community. We feel fortunate to have the opportunity to be part of creating a positive and productive middle school that serves all students. Working with key stakeholders, the design of our schedule for next year will in part focus on a 3-year elective trajectory for our arts offerings, with the hope that we can create a larger scope and sequence for our art program that our feeder schools can help build and our high schools can receive the benefit of having students with years of training in the arts. Next year, we are planning on offering beginning and advanced band, beginning and advanced dance, choir, introduction to music, mock trials, STEAM, journalism, and visual arts. Recently, our 4 feeder school 5th graders visited and were provided an opportunity to see our band and dance students perform. Our 8th grade leaders took the students on a tour of the school and answered their questions and talked about their experience at Ockley Green. Our 6th grade team is already planning a way to welcome this new group of students to our community for next year. Our PTA and Site Council monthly meetings are well attended by our productive and supportive families. Both groups are highly involved in planning for ways to support our teachers and students. The Site Council surveyed our staff, students, and community around school climate, instructional practices, collaboration, and community partnership. Some important takeaways from the survey showed 60% of our students reported that Ockley Green values and respects their culture, racial, sexual orientation, and religion. 75% of our students reported teachers and support staff are good at giving students what they need to feel safe. A proposed recommendation from the Site Council survey indicated that Ockley Green would benefit from offering professional development about trauma-informed care, differentiating instruction for middle school students. We are currently working with the staff from Office of Student Services on a series of professional development on universal design for learning. UDL is an educational framework that guides the development of flexible learning environments that accommodates individual learning differences. This is important as we try to meet the varying needs of our diverse population. With a significant percent of new staff under 3 years of teaching experience, this is a critical component of our professional development. We are working to build and improve upon our school climate, and we seek out opportunities for students' voice to be heard. Currently, our student leaders have solicited suggestions from students to provide a week of spirit activity. A staff and student game is planned, as well as our monthly dance. In an effort to build and strengthen our parent and community involvement, we have been hosting and planning a variety of family nights. Our most recent family night focused on bullying prevention, as well as the role of PBS and restorative justice at Ockley Green. In April, we are looking forward to hosting an Avid family night and an open house for our new families. Thank you for your continued interest and support.
Thank you. And now a report on Pioneer from Mike Framboy, our principal.
That's not our symbol.
From Frambla. La Frambla.
La Frambois.
La Frambla. Of course, you may.
Thank you. Go ahead, you can lead it off. Thank you.
Hello, board. I want to give an update. We actually had a community meeting held last night at the Pioneer campus. Thank you, Chair Edwards and Director Anthony, for joining us. We discussed the classroom plans at Rice and Applegate and listened to the concerns brought to the table from the parents in attendance and some of the staff members as well.
Today we had Rudy Rudolph come out with her team, and we talked about the logistics of actually packing up, being able to move things, the process that the teachers would follow, when boxes would be delivered, things like that. So we have a solid plan to move forward with that. We had a meeting on the 15th with the Rose City Park Neighborhood Association, and there were, I don't know, 15, 20 people in attendance. They had some questions, both from our parent component as well as from the district, which I think the district is getting back to them as well as the parent component. On March 21st, tomorrow night, we're going to the Piedmont Neighborhood Association, and we will lay out our plans for staffing and students and the makeup of the building at Applegate for them. Work on Rice is expected to begin in May. Work on Applegate begins in June when students are out of school. That's where we're at for right now.
Go ahead, Director Moore.
Yep. Before you leave. Mike
or Chris?
We have a question.
Sorry. Can you say any more about what happened at the community meeting last night?
Last night?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just for the record, a bunch of us were out of town traveling for board business. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Including the superintendent. So.
We went through what our plans were. We put up a map of each building. We've actually placed classrooms into them so that parents could see if their son or daughter was in room 1 at Holiday, for instance, they would be going to room 14 at Applegate. We've defined de-escalation spaces and sensory spaces, but we wanted to get more parent input on what the actual makeup of the buildings would be past that. The de-escalation spaces we have to define because that would probably be the bulk of the work at Applegate as far as construction goes. We picked up 12 more parent volunteers to be on the planning committee, which is good. So that gives us about 20 people. Our plan is to then kind of break them up into groups depending on if we go with a 2-site model or a 3-site model, get everyone out to see the schools, and then go back to our maps and continue to plan.
We also collected information about when people are available to start doing parent tours as well as advisory tours, and then working to develop student tours late in the spring.
So just Director Moore, maybe to follow up a bit, I think sort of one piece that may have been missing last night is, so there was I think a great discussion at the school level, but there's a fair number of questions that link to sort of district-related initiatives, whether it's budget or the review of the IEP. So it seems that that's a piece that needs to be linked in to the broader planning. So that was one thing that I think wasn't able to be covered because it was more a school-based meeting last night.
I think our plan moving forward is to continue with the school-based meetings as far as making a plan for actually moving the schools. I think there are a lot of questions that we do not have answers to, and I think the community's looking to you all for more information about that process. But our plan is to continue making the best plan that we can to move the schools if and when we move.
So Superintendent Guerrero, are we having later on this evening, as part of the budget discussion, a discussion about the facilities budget, or is that a different meeting? Sorry.
I don't know if we'll be having a facilities update, but certainly a budget update.
Can't hear you.
So a budget update around the cost related to the move? Or?
We'll have to see what our CFO has prepared for us tonight.
Okay, but possibly.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
You don't have any questions? 112 days in, no questions?
We have a number of questions that we've given to staff and asked them to respond to them. And we'll be hopefully getting a budget update either tonight or when it's ready on the facilities move.
Not too late to do what's right.
So our next presentation is by Andrew Johnson regarding access.
Not okay.
Good evening, board and superintendent. It's good to see you. Just recently, there was a walkthrough at the Holiday Youngstown site by the staff and also facilities. That was in late February. We also had a community meeting. About 30 folks came to see some questions around facilities and also around daycare. Today, actually, there was another meeting with facilities and IT with staff around logistics of the relocation. We've had 2 open houses on March 6th and March 8th. Those were really to inform new families about the relocation. Teachers did a really great job. They presented on some program elements and some teaching strategies there. And then we are hoping to have one more open house on March 22nd. Thank you.
Any questions from the board?
So
Okay.
I'm going to just go back to Pioneer. I have a question is based on unfamiliarity with how special ed and IEPs work. So with the IEP, so for students who have IEPs, which a lot of the students at Pioneer have.
All of them have.
I stand corrected. So are those IEPs for when if the students were to move?
It goes with this.
I'm asking the question of our district staff. Thank you. Is the school staff the one who reviews the IEP to make sure that the services that the student currently receives, that there's continuous service, or is it district staff, or is it the district special ed staff? So we have whatever 135 IEPs. Who will be going through each of those to make sure that when students are moved, that they continue to receive the required IEP services?
So that would be the responsibility of teachers who are working with them all the time, who are familiar with the IEP, to ensure that those IEP requirements are met. And then, of course, whenever it needs to be reviewed by the team, it's reviewed by the team, which includes parents, the staff that work with the student.
And then when we know questions might be coming up, if they need district answers to from district leadership, they can be present as well. So the process of ensuring the IEP delivery of service is met is no different than it has been right now in their current site. If they move to a different site, it's the same process.
So will that review of the IEP happen before the move? So say there's a specific set of activities or a need for a certain setting or for a particular student. When is the analysis going to happen of whether or not the current services are going to still be able to be provided in a different environment?
So that should be happening all along the way, right? That's why we want staff and parents involved in the process of helping determine what are those things that we need to provide at the sites. Also working with district staff on that. So there's a lot of people involved, and we need the input of staff who are working with the students, as well as looking at the facilities. What do they have now, and what are they doing going forward? The administrators in the building, in the program, will also assist with that. And then anytime new students are placed in a program, you go through that process again. So whether they're in the current site or in a new site, that part of the process is part of the process.
That's not true. Special ed is supposed to represent the district in all IEP reviews. Where'd you find this?
Okay, I'm going to ask the audience that's not an appropriate response as part of our board meeting. Thank you, Dr. Curtis. Any other questions from board members? Okay. Anything else in this? Okay, great. Thank you. Director Anthony, I'm wondering if you will indulge us with just go ahead with the budget discussion before the charter schools. Can we change the order? So there's a budget discussion that follows the charter, and I'm just wondering if we can change, if you mind if we change the order. Thank you. Thank you. So Director Moore, do you want to kick off the budget discussion that we have scheduled?
We had an FAO meeting last Tuesday, and we got more information about the staffing. We got a really nice analysis of the trends over time in terms of staffing. Not quite sure what's going to be in the PowerPoint tonight. What else? It was a lively discussion that had a lot of info. So I'm looking forward to even more info tonight.
I think one of the things that was important in that meeting relative to the staffing and relative to a lot of the communication that we're getting from families is that we're not there yet. These are not final numbers. We're still working on that. It's still in process. And so we just want to make sure that our school communities know that.
So we're probably a week out from having finalized numbers for FTE and staffing within schools. So there are several buckets that make up the school site budget allocations, which is mostly FTE. So we're not quite finished yet.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Good evening. My name is Ryan Dutcher. I'm the interim budget director. And so we have, just as a kind of a place setter, so we have standing budget updates on board agendas. So our goal all along was to bring pieces of the budget as they come together, rather than wait till May or June and give you one large piece of it. We're giving you incremental updates all along. So it's going to probably feel a little bit less formalized than it has in the past. But the goal, I think, for the Finance, Audit, and Operations Committee and for this is that it's more, hopefully more interactive and more helpful. So, and I'm certainly up to, because this is for trying to be more responsive, I'm certainly open to any kind of feedback or suggestions on different places where you want to dig deep or have questions and that type of thing. So, but tonight what we're going to do is really going to give you an update in terms of where we are, what we know about overall revenue and spending as we see it today, and then we'll talk a little about next steps. So that's kind of the main focus for tonight. Okay, so just a quick reminder on the process, because this is a little bit different than we've done in the past. I want to give kind of a nice picture of all the pieces that are done and not yet done. And just generally speaking, if we chunk the budget up into these 5 categories, I can tell you where we are. So the revenue piece and the main primary factors behind the revenue are obviously going to be our ending fund balance from the year we're in right now, how much money we have left. Our state school fund is the vast majority of the revenue forecast. Our local option revenue is a close second. And then our non-budget, or our non-FTE budget. So that's the all the consolidated, that type of thing. So all those pieces come into the revenue to give us an idea of how much revenue, how many resources we're going to have for next year for the district.
Can you explain what consolidated is?
Yeah. So the in the presentation we'll go through it. We'll go through the staffing piece. The consolidated budget, it's a little bit of a misnomer. So schools largely get 2 buckets of resources, generally speaking. They get FTE, which is a vast majority of the resources they have, and they also have what's called a consolidated budget, and that's it's a small pot of money. It's allocated by formula. So they spend on print services. They spend on a variety of different kind of small items that wouldn't normally be covered in the budget, and that's all in the school budget. And so there's usually a little bit left over, and I mean a little bit every year, and that in years past the board has elected to roll that forward to the next year. Okay. So revenue side, we're probably 90% done on the revenue. We look at it not daily, but we definitely look at it weekly to understand how we're trending on that piece of it. Excuse me. The school site budget. So school site budget are the 2 pieces I just talked about. It's largely FTE, but it's also this consolidated budget. We're probably, as Director Moore mentioned, we're probably 95% complete on that piece of it. So the schools have the majority of their FTE allocations. They have a good understanding of what they're going to get. There's still some pieces moving around on the fringes. We obviously know all of the teacher pay increases. The retroactive pay was paid out last week. And then we also know a fair amount about benefits and insurance at this point. Not surprisingly, all these numbers are up, or have increased year over year, some substantially, but we're getting a pretty good handle on all these different pieces that help us define how many dollars we're spending in the schools. And you'll see in future charts here, it's the vast majority, not surprisingly, it's the vast majority of our budget that goes to our schools. And then in years past, we've categorized what we called the central office budget. It has included things like special education, ELL, athletics, other pieces where really 90-some% of the department is in the schools. And what that does, that makes our central office budget look overinflated, and it's just misleading. So what we've attempted to do, and this is meant to be very transparent. I'll show you in a few pages here how these break out. These centrally managed school resources. So generally speaking, there's an administrator here in this building. Special education is a good example. You have a handful of staff here in this building, but the vast majority of their resources are in all the schools. Athletics is the same way. You have 2 or 3 people here. All their resources, all their money is spent in schools. And I think it's a more accurate way to look at that. And then you see what's truly our central office. People like me, heating this building is 5 to 6% of the total general fund budget. So the piece, that piece is probably 80% defined. A lot of those are defined by statute. The piece that is not defined is the central office budget. So that's the piece we're working hard on today. So all the superintendent leadership team are working on their budgets. We've had 4 presentations from those teams. We have 4 more tomorrow over the next couple days. I'm sorry, Thursday. And really the main drivers in those budgets are it's FTE spending and it's contracted services. And then contingency, I didn't want to say contingency is final because it's not really good budgeting to kind of do all the budget and see what ends up at the bottom. We should be more thoughtful about what we want the contingency to be. I have some trends in here. We can talk about how it's trended over time and how some of our peers budget the contingency. But that's a piece we should, and then the board also took a goal to increase that to 5% by 2021. So hopefully we can be marching down that path. Okay, so just really high level here. Here's the general fund summary. So probably the piece to pay most attention to is the bar that I've circled there in the middle. So you'll see the forecast for 2017-18. So that's just our projection about January. We projected what the year was going to look like. The important piece is that ending balance and reserve at the very bottom. That's the number that will flow forward to next year that we can use for spending next year. Our resources we expect to be about 2% higher. So that includes the revenue from state school fund and all the tax resources and our beginning balance as well. And then from there, it's pretty simple math to say if you want a 24.3% ending balance or 4%, or it kind of back into what our spending needs to be. So that's really where we start. We have to balance our budget every year, and that's where we start. Okay? And since you've last seen this, resources are up less than $1 million, mainly on state funding. Okay, it's a little bit of good news. Okay, this is a little bit of a dense slide, so I'll help you walk through this. So this gets to the spending side. So when we think about spending, before we had talked about if we just simply rolled up all of our spending, the size of gap we would have. And so I'll pull you to the top of the page here. So here's our resources at the top. It's the same under both a roll forward scenario and a scenario where we reduce vacancies and contracts in the central office. And you can see the vast majority of these are all of our spending line items: salaries, contract expenses. Here's some additional expenditures, which I'll talk about in another page. If we just roll our budget forward and just assume we're going to do the same thing next year that we did this year, but we know we have teacher increases, we know our insurance rates went up, we know a lot of these things happen regardless, and we know there's some things we need to commit to in this 8.7, we end up with a $17 million gap. So if we roll forward, there are a couple places we can really impact spending in the school district. The non-rep and leadership, so that's, generally speaking, that's me people in this office, and non-represented people and leadership. That number, if we rolled it forward, it'd be 57 million. This is just a scenario. If we pulled it down to 52 million, and it's a headcount function, we could start to close this gap. And also our contract expenses, if we pull that down to that amount, that's a pretty good chunk, pretty good amount to pull it down. We can get to the point where we can still maintain our contingency and close our gap. So that's what all the chiefs are working on. They're in the details and the weeds of their org charts and their contracts, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, clearly this $17 million shortfall won't fly. So that's how this is one way we could get to a balanced budget.
Can I ask before you change slides? Sure. For just about the principals, I guess also those non-represented staff, but the principals in the buildings. The savings you have there, I'm assuming we're anticipating a pay increase, like most of our other employee groups. So would the decrease be because we've got fewer people, not because we're holding steady on the pay?
Is that a principal-specific question or for general?
Well, I guess there's two parts. I don't know if they're treated differently. You can tell me if they are. Yeah,
they are. Yes. So as I mentioned before, the school staffing is largely done. That includes principals and how principals are allocated. There is an increase built into that assumption as well. So that increase is we need to pay for it some way. We get a little bit of a revenue increase. If this is the piece you're referring to, this line on the non-rep and leadership, that's actually a headcount reduction.
Yeah, so that's
yes,
just asking. So yes. It's not people making less, it's
No,
less people.
it's fewer people, yes. And there is, and one way so the column on the left assumes, and we have a lot of vacancies in this building, in this district, one way the column on the left assumes we fill those vacancies. Obviously, one way to get there is to not fill those vacancies, and it's a bit of a strategic discussion. I mean, those people were doing valuable work before, so it takes some work process management and some changes. We have important work to do, but that's one, in terms of least painful ways to do it, that's much easier than pink slips, obviously.
So if I'm reading this right, you're looking at roughly a 50 FTE decrease in the non-representative and leadership employee group.
Yeah, that's correct, and those numbers are around for a reason, and that's just simple math, average salary, yes, right, but that'd give you about 50 reduction, yes, correct. And we have, keep in mind, we have, last count, 100 and some vacancies across the district, and when you boil it down to finance, HR, accounting, it's a smaller number, but we still have a sizable number of vacancies. But things aren't happening too, by the way. Not exactly it definitely slows the staff down. We're not fully staffed.
And unfortunately, I do need to point out that over the last couple of years, the departments have used those vacant positions to fund other critical staff additions, fill in gaps.
That's correct.
Patch emergencies.
That's correct.
Put on bailing wire. It has been really a patchwork. And if we're taking those little bits of personal reserve away, we better make sure that our departments are actually adequately funded or having willingness to go to the piggy bank during the course of the year.
Correct.
So one of the things that you said at the FAO meeting that I think is important to note here is we're not talking about an across-the-board cut. We're talking about evaluating what positions, what work needs to be done, how many people we need to do the work, and then allocating FTE appropriately.
That's correct, and Superintendent Guerrero has been very clear from the very beginning, and I think this is a healthy way to do it, to challenge all of his leadership team to evaluate everything they're doing in their organization and build up and prioritize the things you really need to get done.
Okay.
And that's really it's more time consuming, and we started late, so it's hard, but it's the right way to do it.
And I think it's a much more student-centered approach, because what you're talking about is in past years we may have said, okay, we're going to do a 8% reduction across the board. Everybody show me what that looks like in your department. And what we're talking about now is, what do you need to do in your department to deliver the services that our students need, and what is it going to take for you to do that, and make your case.
That's correct. Yes, and it's a different approach, and you can see it's and this is good. I mean, it challenges our systems and our data and all of our people to think about it in that way. I mean, finance team included, but it's definitely the right way to do it. You stimulates so much better conversations about if you think a contract's valuable, articulate why it's valuable from the point of view of the students, and really be clear about that and quantify it. Okay. I know there's a lot of numbers on this page. Any other questions? Okay, so because I didn't want to leave the contingency for the end, talk about the trend for this district. You can see historically, and I think the problem was worse than it has been, in more distant past than it has been recently. But we would budget. You can see the bottom line, the red line of what we budgeted for a contingency, and this is a percentage of the total expenditures in the general fund. Okay, and so for us. Just keep in mind, 4% is about $24 million. So it's about $6 million per percentage point. And it's a tremendously large number. But when you put it in the context of district spending, so a payroll cycle for us is $30 million. And we spend around the district, we spend about $50 million a month. So it's hard to think about what the catastrophe would be, but it wouldn't cover us for a full month, the contingency. And so, as I mentioned before, the board took a goal at the CBRC's urging to get the contingency up to 5% by 2021. And with this, 4% is what we have as a placeholder in the budget. It's a nice, the red line is a nice trend up towards that healthier number.
So
go ahead.
How does this compare to other districts?
Beaverton, Salem-Kaiser, I'm not sure about Tigard-Tualatin, but most of them budget 5%. And it's, I haven't been involved in their budget processes, but I get the impression it's just a matter of process. They start there and they work their way up.
So just some context. Jim Scherzer and I were reminiscing earlier tonight that if you took that chart back to 2001, the reserves were $200,000. Which is what the previous board had left the 2001 board. And your reference to, I don't know what could happen if you'd lose a month's payroll, but in 2002, during the recession, the state unilaterally mid-year just announced they were going to be sending a lot less money. And because of the heavy dependence of Oregon on the income tax, obviously when you have a recession, income tax reduce, and then there was a pretty dramatic drop. And so this is really a tribute to wise management and stewardship of the district resources to get the number to this level, because while it seems like a big number, it would allow you to effectively manage through a pretty difficult financial situation.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, and it is, it's the unfortunate reality in any organization like ours, any knowledge-based organization, is the vast majority of our spending is on people. So if we ended up in a situation like that, the first move would have to be laying people off. So it's an uncertain world out there, so we want to make sure we're prepared.
Well, what is the GFAO recommendation?
It's 10%. Yeah, so much higher. Okay. So another piece, and that top line is a little faded, so I apologize. But one of the things we wanted to understand, because as we were pulling the data together for our presentation last week, was to understand how, our general fund has increased over time. I mean, Oregon has spent more and more dollars on education in the more recent past. So from PPS's point of view, how have we prioritized those revenue increases over time? And this chart, I think, tells a pretty interesting story that over the past 5 years, while our revenue has grown by about 32%, and that's over that entire period of time, our spending on instructional, and instructional includes all of our teachers and all of our assistants. It's a broad ODE definition of instructional, has grown by 46%. So it's grown quite a bit faster than what our revenue. So we've taken all of our revenue growth and then some and put it into the classrooms. And this budget, you can see the last point is what we're assuming now for the budget. This budget really continues on that same trend. It's a little bit flatter, but for the most part, it's the same trend.
Okay, this is where I feel compelled to mention that even though the state school fund amount has increased, and increased, not insignificantly in the last couple of years, we remain $2 billion short of the quality education model funding level.
That's right.
$2 billion.
Right.
So, just to put things in context, we are still chronically underfunded.
Okay. Yes, it's an excellent point. So we wanted to go a little bit on the school side budget allocation. So, and as Director Moore mentioned, we'll have detailed school-by-school information that obviously people are very interested in the next week or so. Principals are obviously very good at maximizing the use of their resources. They're doing everything they can to optimize and put FTE in the right places. So once that's done, we'll be able to share a school-by-school analysis. But probably where I'd draw your eye is probably to the variance column, just so you can get a picture of where we are year over year. And this is high level, district-wide, across the entire system. So 51 additional headcount. The average salary across the district up about $1,600. Total base salary is up $6.4 million. Our fringe, our healthcare benefits, et cetera, are both up pretty substantially. Here's our overage wages that we have in the budget right now. Here's the consolidated, which is the amount that the schools have to spend on other kind of cash needs and that type of thing. It's largely flat. So overall, about $10 million increased across the total school site budget. Okay, so that's kind of the big picture. The other piece, and we shared this before, and this has changed just a little bit. We wanted to, and knowing, and I want to reinforce the caveat that we're not done, but we did want to understand. So how are at the individual school level, how are they faring through the changes in staffing model and that type of thing? And we have enrollment changes across the district every year as well. And so, just to put them into kind of broad buckets, 57% have consistent or increased staffing. So nearly 60% have more resources than they did last year. 30% have a decrease in FTE, but that decrease in FTE is equal to or less than the enrollment decrease. So even in our lower grades, with the staffing change that aligns resources to programs, there's still a student-based formula behind that as well. And what this tells us is it's not. We haven't taken as many resources out as the enrollment might have declined in some of these schools.
So just a question about that, the decrease. So with some schools, are you counting some schools twice in the 30 and the 13%? So is it 43% of the schools having a decrease, or is that a simplistic?
No, it should. I haven't checked the math. It should be 100%. The 57 plus 30 plus 13 should be 100%.
No, but if you take the two calls, the FTE decrease due to enrollment, the FTE decrease due to model change, and it's 30 and 13, does that mean there's a total of 43%, or are some schools double counted?
Oh, I see. I would have to check. I'll have to check. It's a good question. I'll check. Yeah.
That they're not distinct entirely.
Yeah, because
right.
43 is different than 30.
Right. Yes. Right, yes. No, it's a good question. Good context. Last time we showed this, we had one school in the analysis required square. Since then, we added resources to that school, so that school is now, it's more stable. Before, it was down from a resource point of view, and that is part of what we did with our set aside.
Check that off the list.
Yeah, that's right. So this central administered resources. So just to get our hands around, how big these. First of all, what kind of functions are we talking about when we talk about centrally administered resources? And then from a budget point of view, how large are they? Because most people probably don't know how much we spend in all these different groups. And in order of size, the biggest one is special education. Vast majority are teachers and people in the schools. Facilities and asset management, clearly the vast majority of those dollars are spent on school buildings, not in this building. So we would define that as something that's school facing. Transportation, same way, and then ESL. And then I bucketed athletic, security, a bunch of other pieces where we have central office administrators, but all the work happens in the classrooms. I bucketed all those together for an additional $22 million. So when we start to put together the full budget, and I think about the reviews with the public, we'll be able to split that up into what's truly central office, and what's the central administered piece, which is vast majority schools, and then what we've traditionally called instructors in schools.
A couple of those categories have, there's different funding buckets. I thought there's federal funding buckets, like for special ed and ESL. So is this our cost? So it's a bigger total bucket that we spend there?
That's a good question. So everything in this presentation is general fund only. So this would not include any other federal funds and that type of thing. Yeah. So these, when you add those, these numbers would be larger. Okay, and then just from a trend point of view, how this has trended over the past 5 years, and it's definitely up. I think it's up. I want to say it's up 15% or so, but a slight increase over time. And then you can see also, I think it's always good to know how efficiently we're using our resources, and I always think that something less than 2% of actual to budget is pretty good. So they're not leaving a lot of resources on the table, but they're not overspending. Oops. And then central office as well. So central office, if you pull this data back, there was I think it was probably 2008. The central office it was reduced by close to 40%, maybe 40-some percent. Since then, it's been, and you can see this line's a little bit steeper than some of the other lines, but it has been, marching back up, and this is where we expect central office to. Oops, this is where we expect central office to land for this budget year. Okay. And then the last piece, on the first page, we mentioned some additional needs. So these are pieces we need to, things we know about that we need to fit into the budget. So all these will impact the general fund, and these are things that were not in last year's budget. These are all incremental pieces. You can obviously all read the list. Probably the pieces I'd call out: outdoor school funding, because now that's a source of revenue for us. That's actually good news. And then the grant shortfalls, we're working through those right now. Any grants that we don't move forward with, or where the funding is reduced, it puts us in a situation we have to make a decision on continuing forward with the resources and the services, or and paying for it out of the general fund, or no longer providing those resources.
What about the ballot measure 98
Pardon
funds?
me?
What about the ballot measure 98 funds? I'm assuming that's a plus.
Yes.
As well.
Yes, that is. I haven't looked at that number in a while, but yes, that is plus. Pardon me? Six. Okay, I was going to say 6.8. Okay, good. Good.
Arts tax.
Pardon me?
Arts tax.
Arts tax is, I want to say it's 5, right around 5 million. Yep.
So those potential grant shortfalls, would those mostly be federal?
Yes, they would be federal.
Do we have clarity yet on what the federal funding levels are going to be?
So we really, if you're talking Title II and IV, I believe, I don't have a lot of clarity at this point. I mean, I think there's a fair amount of nervousness. I've reached out to our contacts at Council of Great City Schools. Haven't heard from them, so I need to keep pestering them. But not a lot of clarity on which way that's
We
going.
just spent the weekend talking about that lack of clarity, particularly with Title IV funds and whether there's going to be different areas of eligibility, and everybody was sitting around saying we don't quite know yet.
Okay. So this once again, I mean, this is what contingency would help us if we learn something unfortunate in July or August, then we can make the decision. We did this last year with Cap 4 and Gear Up, right? We moved money. The board made a decision to move money into the general fund to keep moving those programs ahead. Okay. And then just really quickly for next steps, and I'll share the more elaborate calendar, but just things to keep in mind. The week of March 26th and April 2nd, and yes, that's spring break, but we have to keep working on it. We're working on all the central office budget pieces. On March 29th, oops, I have a little, CBRC. The CBRC meets on March 29th. April 3rd, we have a board work session. April 10th, we'll have another update just like this. It'll be a regular board meeting, but I'll come in and give you an update on where we are. At that point, we should have good information on central office. And then on April 17th, FA&O, we've been doing deep dives, and Director Moore and I will talk about which areas we want to dig deeply into and really understand a certain topic.
Have we heard back from the Tax Supervising Commission whether the sort of later vote can happen?
Yes. Yeah. So he really wants to help us out, and so he's been very cooperative and said he'd be willing to do it. He has some very specific requirements on us based on the data we give him. But he definitely wants to help. He's been pretty explicit that it's a one-time. He doesn't want it to creep into next time we just build our schedule over and over again with that assumption. But he will work with us. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so I had a question about the another question about the calendar. So we're still waiting on final staffing numbers for schools.
Correct.
So what's your best guess on when we'll have some, good level of confidence in those numbers?
So I believe, I'd probably want some of my peers from the instructional side to help on this, but I would think within a week we'd have better, I don't know exactly where all the different pieces are, within a week we'd have better insight into those.
Okay.
So that's the week of the 26th.
Okay. will you be sharing that with the board, like school by school allocations?
So that would be the goal, is to share that level of detail, because I think everybody really wants to see it and should see it. So that'd be the goal, to share it with the board.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want to see it.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, the plan is to share it with everybody out there.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. At that point. Yeah.
So is it reasonable? We've got. Don't we have a board meeting on the 2nd? We have something on the 2nd, don't we? April?
I
think we had an FAO meeting on the 2nd. Am I making that up?
I have one on the 7th. You know, we may have one, but we may not have an item on the agenda, so we may have one on the 2nd. It is spring break, right? No?
Yeah. Okay, April 2nd is a Monday. April 3rd, we have an FAO meeting.
Okay.
So guess what? If that's doable, I think that would be great if we could talk about it then.
Okay. Let me check with the team, and I should know by end of day tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
No, just thank you. I found that really helpful.
Okay,
It's
good.
finally it's just so much more streamlined and clear.
Good.
Anything else? Superintendent Guerrero, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just add a couple things?
Absolutely.
So the FAO, I have to say, the FAO meetings, the last few meetings around the budget have been very illuminating and really meaty. So anybody who wants to get deep into some budgetary weeds, you know, do I have a committee for you? The other thing is that we have been talking about coming up with a way to do the budget hearings in a more kind of meaningful way for public participation. And I don't think we've quite hit on a format yet, but it's one of the things we've been talking about. And one thing that we did change at the last FAO meeting was that we had a joint session with FAO and the CBRC, the Community Budget Review Committee. And I thought that was a really great use of everybody's time because we got an awful lot of really good questions that, so I think that's a kind of a good model going forward. And then we'll eventually have public budget hearings, and we're trying to rethink how to do that so that it's more useful for us and more meaningful for parents and community to provide input.
Great. Chair Moore, one thing, given the substance in the Finance and Audit Operations Committee, I'm wondering if we could ask to have all the materials just posted, you know, either before the meeting, so that individuals who want to come to the meeting or those who aren't able to make it have the opportunity to review all the materials.
So I have to admit, I haven't looked for the last couple of meetings, but they were being posted, certainly after the meeting. I think it might be unrealistic to think that all of the budget materials would be able to be posted before, you know, with a couple of days' notice, like we have the board materials ready, because I think staff are working on these things like right up to the minute. But yeah, we can certainly make sure that all the materials are posted after the meetings.
Great. Also, I'd like to request just the presentation from tonight, if we could make sure that's posted somewhere that I think it was a great educational document.
Sure.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. Next, we have a charter schools for consideration, and I am going to ask Chair Anthony, who is the chair of the Charter Schools Committee, to introduce the topic, and before we go to the motion on the resolution.
Thank you. Lamont French Immersion Public Charter School is in the third and final year of operation in its second charter contract with Portland Public Schools. Lamont has requested renewal of its charter. Staff has reviewed Lamont's academic, financial, and operational performance and finds that Lamont has substantively met all renewal criteria, and staff recommends renewing the charter with Lamont for a 5-year period. Staff recommendation is based on information gathered from the official site visit, the renewal hearing, Lamont's annual performance framework and report, and other information obtained during the renewal period. I would like to note that Lamont is in compliance with their charter and all other state and federal laws. It is in compliance with the charter of the public charter school. It is meeting the student performance goals and agreements specified in the charter. It is fiscally stable and has used the sound financial management system described in the proposal submitted. It is in compliance with any renewal criteria specific to the charter of the public charter school. Finally, Lamont is in alignment with our equity policy implementation plan. And with this resolution, the board is asking Lamont to demonstrate that its sources of donations and grants are reasonably assured, and that it has a plan in place for supplementing funds if the funds received from the state school fund make that necessary. That Lamont has a contingency plan in place if revenues are significantly less than or expenses are significantly more than projected. That each school year's budget will be amended and resubmitted to the district when there are any significant changes in the state school fund. We also ask that Lamont provide a plan to attract a diverse population of students and get back to us on an annual basis. The board would like the opportunity to review this plan and would like to hear at least annually how it has worked. We expect that it will involve outreach to specific underserved communities, and that Lamont will look internally at their culture and programming for elements that might cause them to be less than welcoming, such as looking at who is marketing to specific communities, what transportation barriers there may be, and what after-school care is available. Other than that, I would just say that the committee unanimously recommended approval of the charter.
I like the fact, I mean, given that the guidelines for the charter review and approval process are so clearly laid out for us, I like the fact that that the committee is recommending some additional review that exceeds the requirements that we are beholden to, and gives us a chance to exercise our values.
Absolutely.
So before we have further board discussion, I want to make sure we get the resolution on the table. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Director Anthony moves and Director Rosen seconds the motion to adopt Resolution 5618. Ms. Houston, is there any public comment?
There's none.
So now board discussion. So I just want to sort of continue on the theme that Director Anthony raised about the diversity of the student body, both in terms of race and ethnicity, but also economically disadvantaged students, which are very few in this school. And this wasn't, there was a committee discussion, not just on this charter, but really all the charter renewals that were up. The other charter renewals, which we voted on in block last meeting, were one-year renewals. So I think we raised the issue about the diversity and the outreach and the effectiveness of the outreach that was happening with all the schools. It was just the ones that last week were for 1 year, and this was for 5 years. So I'm glad to see that we have something in the resolution about a plan. I think we also talked about, or discussed in committee, the possibility of like what can PPS do to sort of set some benchmarks about how the district might provide some guidance on outreach to more diverse communities. We had a discussion about whether materials, applications and materials were translated in other languages, and just the effectiveness of the outreach, and whether there's some things that PPS can share that would help these schools reach a more diverse potential population and ultimately have a more diverse student bodies. So I'm glad to see that in the committee, and thank the chair for long discussions about it. Any other board discussion about the resolution or the charter renewal?
No, I would just think that in the discussion of how we support them in recruiting a diverse student population, that working with our community liaisons here would certainly, that have pipelines to the communities would be really helpful to the charters. So get them connected if we haven't. That's it.
Okay. And as Chair Anthony noted, it was a unanimous recommendation out of the committee. So the board will now vote on Resolution 5618. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes. Yes.
All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Any abstentions? Resolution 5618 is approved by a 6-0 vote, and Student Representative Tran is absent this evening. So I'm now going to go back to an agenda item that was at the very start of the board meeting, which was the board work plan and the roadmap. Ms. Houston, I don't know if there's there's supposed to be a slide presentation. Board members have it in front of them as well, and this has been posted on our website. So when the board was installed in July, we set a pretty ambitious agenda, hiring a new superintendent, creating an evaluation plan, working with staff. We have launched the health and safety improvements in our schools, authorized the opening of 2 new middle schools, commissioned an independent review of the Whitehurst misconduct case, requested recommendations and policy changes, negotiated and ratified a contract with teachers, and launched revisions in several district policies, several of those that were considered tonight. So there is a lot of work underway, and as we discussed about 2 months ago, sort of moving out of sort of the sprint and more into sort of a middle distance run, sort of changing the pace a little bit, but we still have a fair amount of work from the board to be accomplished before the end of the year. So we have put together a work or project plan that provides a roadmap for the board, for the community, for visibility to the community, and also to the staff that we're working with on a daily basis, because none of this work happens just in a vacuum with the board by itself. It's much of it's in partnership with the staff. Sometimes we're in the lead, sometimes staff is in the lead, but it's a very close partnership. So this should be a template for the work for the last 4 months. So generally, the context of the work plan is it's a 4-month work plan that runs from now through the end of the school year, and it's also going to be a framework for the long-term sustainable, that would be a long-term sustainable template for the board's work. We've got a cataloged work that is annual work that needs to basically appear on every annual work plan. And the purpose of putting this together, it's a way to organize our work, collectively understand our priorities. So I think we all have many passions and interests and things that we would like to work on, but this allows us to have a collective discussion about the work and our priorities. It allows us to clearly define what is the board's role in the district's work and what actions we take, so that the board is playing its appropriate role and staff in their role as well. But this allows us to be really clear, is this board work or staff work, and then also provides us the ability to track our progress. So the work plan structure is, our work revolves around 8 strategic imperatives. There's work items, there's, again, as I mentioned, there's sort of a definition of what the board's role is on each work plan item. And we've prioritized the work and into legal requirements, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. And obviously legal requirements, there's some things that the board is required to do that, like pass a budget, adopt particular policies so that we're in compliance with law. There's other things that are priorities, for example, the opening of the middle schools, and those things would fall into Tier 1. Tier 2s are some things that are issues that have been identified by the board as priorities, but that we may not have the bandwidth, or we may not yet have the capabilities or be ready to have the discussion. And then lastly, we have for each of our work plan items sort of a status of where they are, and it falls into a completed work, or on track, off track, or not yet started. So this is the structure of the work plan. Generally, we have came up with sort of 8 strategic imperatives for the work that we have underway. There's district staff leadership, which is hiring, managing, and evaluating the superintendent. There's school board leadership, to take action to make sure that we're student-focused, accountable, transparent, effective. We also have a strategic plan development and preparation for that, supporting student success, healthy, safe, modern, and accessible schools, aligning our resources to support PPS schools and students. Supporting PPS workforce talent planning, compensation, supports, and accountability, and operational excellence. And then we have some foundational items. So we have these strategic imperatives. Underneath each of the strategic imperatives, there are different buckets of work that we've identified that we want to get done before the end of this school year, or plot out in a school year 18-19 work plan. And then the next 12 slides, I'm not going to go through them individually, but because they're all posted, and this is sort of a working document for the board and for the community to understand our work. But this is an example of the first strategic imperative around district leadership. So we had, 5 things related to this particular strategic imperative. We've hired a superintendent. We have an evaluation instrument created. Quarterly check-ins planned, and then we of course have not yet started the 18-19 evaluation instrument development or goal setting. And so we're able to easily look at this and see sort of where we are, the status of our work. And if you go through the, this template also shows whether there's a vote required by the board, and so the timeline of when the activity is going to happen. If we go to some of the other strategic imperatives, you can see some places we're on track, others we are maybe slightly off track, and we need to look at, what do we need to do to get these initiatives back on track? Because these are all, in this template, these are all Tier 1 or legally required things that the board has to do. So just to give you an example, more district staff leadership. Let's see, what's another good example? Let's go to, this is a good one. This is supporting PPS workforce talent planning, compensation, supports, and accountability. So we've identified all of our employee groups that we're either have been in negotiation with or are in negotiations with, and where we are on track. It's very important to the board that we take seriously how we support and support our staff, and there's different employee groups. This gives us an easy benchmark to look at of how we're doing related to that. Again, just a variety of different issues. We can see where how we're doing on these issues. And then, so these are all the strategic imperatives. Here you have the bond work. Some of it's on track. Others needs to be accelerated if we're going to get back on track, or it's not yet started. And then in the appendix, we have, this was part of the prioritization process that the board worked on at our last work session, and also then a work session with staff leadership, but looking at the sort of 150 different items that we wanted to get done before the end of the school year. Realistically, it wasn't all going to happen, and if we wanted to live to see the end of the school year. So we have designated some things as tier 2, or things that we're going to be putting on the 2018-19 school year roadmap or work plan for the board. So as you can see, whoops, the wrong way. There's a whole host of items that are still outstanding. So this work, we'll use this as for our agenda planning for board meetings and for sort of the cadence of our committee meetings, and making sure that we meet our legally required deadlines. For example, all the budget deadlines that are required by law, and then also ones that we have built in that are more informal milestones, like our community meetings. Those are all built into the roadmap so that we can easily see each month between now and the end of the school year what we have to have done. It's a sort of organic document. It'll continue to be changed. I think we'll assess whether we continue to be on track with our work, or whether things have moved off track and whether we need to make adjustments, or in some cases whether we need to move things to the 18-19 school year because of circumstances or just internal capacity. And I want to thank all the committee chairs who their work plans really informed this document, and hopefully it'll be a useful tool for the board and community members to see what work that we have prioritized and we have underway and that we'll be working on over the next 4 months. And then also just as a planning guide for staff. That's that item. We've already done the budget. The last formal item we have.
I just had one comment on the
I'm sorry.
plan. I think it's a good representation of the items that were brought forward from the committee process about the issues that we want to address. And I think that, we had a pretty good conversation around how we want to characterize our strategic imperatives. The difficulty being that we don't have adopted strategic priorities in concert with the superintendent, and we know that building a strategic plan is a really important process. And once we have that, and that is a mutual process, then we can have really clear accountability metrics. Because right now we don't have accountability metrics. We have a laundry list of activities that we want and or need to do. But really, what makes school boards effective is that monitoring and having really clear metrics of success. First describing the goals, but having really clear metrics of success and monitoring toward it. And sometimes those are metrics of success around our own operations, but sometimes they're really clear metrics of student success, and having the conversations around, let's look at the data. Where are we on a quarterly basis? How is our gap here? What are the initiatives and the interventions that we're using to address this particular issue? Staff, what can you bring forward to tell us how we're making progress toward where we need to be? And we don't have anything like that in here around student achievement. So I mean, it's an iterative process, and I know there's no one more anxious to begin the strategic planning process than Superintendent Guerrero. But even in the interim, I hope we can start to pivot a little bit more toward a deeper focus on student achievement and some more concrete metrics as part of our work, because I think it's our responsibility.
Well, certainly I'll invite you to the Teaching and Learning Committee, because certainly in that committee we are looking, you know, and the agendas are posted, so we're looking at various topics and groups and programs, and really looking at student level achievement data, particularly by subgroups, so you're welcome to join us for any of those discussions.
I would also point out that the middle school work that the board did and that is now being done with the staff is, you know, goes right to the heart of student success and equity. So we do have items built in here, and I would point out that one of the strategic imperatives is a strategic plan development. We had board leadership had an early conversation with the superintendent about whether it was feasible to actually engage in a strategic planning process this year, and the sense was, yes, that this was a 18-19, so we were going to get through the year. We had some pretty clearly identified and some pretty ambitious goals to get done through the year, but that this would be an 18 and 19 process, and hopefully then we have the sort of codified goals that are student focused. I will say that there's two things that need to happen one primary thing needs to happen this school year related to the strategic plan development, and that is if we need resources for it, we need to identify it as part of the budget process so that we don't start next year with we're ready to start our planning process, but we don't have the capabilities to support a really rigorous community-driven process. Any other comments from board members? Okay.
I guess just one. I think we all need to be. All need to acknowledge out loud that this is very much a rebuilding year or a building year, and this is a district that has been adrift for a long time, a very long time, and the first order of business is to try to build some infrastructure and build some systems that will allow educators and staff to actually serve students in the most productive way. So that's going to be, I think next year, I hope, is going to look very different. And we're going to be able to start a strategic planning process where we can really start thinking about not just next week, but 5 years from now, and what do we want this district to be doing for kids? So,
yeah, great points. Anything else? So our last item is the board received a packet of information on each of the 4 Step 3 complaint considerations. All 4 appeals are related to the Pioneer Program move. We're going to vote on each individual appeal. So in this process, for the vote on the appeal, there's no public comment allowed. And so individually, I'm going to walk through each of the, we're going to vote on each one of them individually. So Since there's also no board discussion, we're just going to vote through them. Board members, all in favor of hearing appeal number 1, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes. Yes.
All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Are there any abstentions? The motion passes on a 6-0 vote. Board members, all in favor of hearing appeal number 2, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Are there any abstentions? The motion passes 6-0. Board members, all in favor of hearing appeal number 3, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Are there any abstentions? The motion passes. Board members, all in favor of hearing appeal number 4, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Are there any abstentions? The motion passes on a 6-0 vote. Thank you, board members. We're now into board committee and conference reports. Director Constam of Sparza Brown, Rosen, and Moore all attended the Council of Great City Schools Legislative Policy Conference, and I'd like to ask Director Sparza Brown, as the board's designated lead to the Council of Great City Schools, to present on the consolidated report on the conference.
Great, thank you. As Chair Brim Edwards indicated, for board members and Superintendent Guerrero, Jonathan Garcia, Courtney Wiley, all attended the Council of the Great City Schools Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C. This weekend. So this is a great conference that offers an opportunity to network with other board members, superintendents, and legislative staff from all of the urban school districts from around the country, as well as allowing us to continue to build our relationships with the council staff and partners. So we received policy briefings from congressional staff on key legislative topics that included ESSA implementation, school safety, title funding, Perkins reauthorization, infrastructure, and school facilities. Some members of the team also visited with congressional delegation staff and members to discuss district and the council priorities. So one of the highlights included our own Congressman Blumenauer's address at the invitation of Director Constam to the group yesterday morning. And he was showing his support for districts and all of the issues that we face every day. And in particular, he had a big focus on school safety in the wake of the Parkland shooting. He was impressed with the council's resolution, which we adopted as a board at our last meeting. And Congress Blumenauer, excuse me, is going to enter the resolution into the congressional record. Sadly, this resolution takes on even more importance today since our country experienced another tragic school shooting this morning in Maryland. Thanks.
Just have a quick update. Congressman Blumenauer actually did take it to the floor of Congress yesterday afternoon, so.
Anything else?
Yes, actually I have 3, and one is a little long, but I think it's fairly important. The other 2 are very, very short. Last week I attended the monthly meeting of LPSC, the Local Public Safety Coordinating Council, which of course has our region's best acronym. The council heard a report of the results of a 2-year pilot of the Multnomah County Community Healing Initiative Early Intervention and Diversion Program, which goes by the acronym CHI-I. CHI-I is a voluntary program to direct first-time offenders out of the juvenile justice system. Over an 18-month period between 2015 and 2016, 385 children were referred to the CHI-I program. Participating youth were about 85% less likely to recidivate compared to a matched sample. Director Moore had been at a session with our region's judges, and that question had come up. This is a remarkably effective program, and for some reasons that we should be paying attention to. The overall findings indicate that the program is a promising approach for lowering juvenile recidivism. I have the statistical analysis if anyone is interested in seeing the actual report. Email me at panthony@pps.net. The program's 8-item risk assessment of participants includes chronic truancy and suspension and expulsion during the prior 6 months. That is, of course, pointed directly at Portland Public Schools. African American children were significantly more likely than all other youth to have a suspension or expulsion in the prior 6 months and to have chronic truancy. As a comparison, 43% compared to all other youth at 21%. Overall, African American children were represented in the juvenile justice system at rates far exceeding their presence in the overall population. Again, as a school system and as a society, we are not well serving our African American children. The program also included an examination of 19 family risk factors. Education was number 1, that are very familiar to us in the district as we do more work with adverse childhood experiences and with trauma-informed care. All 19 articles and issues were pointed directly at those concerns. The county's report emphasizes the need for stronger school connections. Many of the children in the program were facing school issues. Coordinators spent significant portions of their time helping youth re-enroll in school and developing connections with school administrators, counselors, and teachers. While on the one hand, this was difficult because coordinators had to navigate different building administration and staff to open access and develop successful plans for youth. On the other hand, the county was remarkably successful at repairing those relationships and successfully maintaining students in school. This is an issue I've previously spoken with the superintendent about. As Director Moore likes to say, we're a system without systems. Well, every single one of our schools seems to have a different entry point, different people to speak with, a different way to set up a relationship, and everything has to be made to measure. Anecdotally, though not in the report, the county's social workers were both remarkably adept and effective working in our schools and improving student performance and achievement. The county feels there is need for a more institutionalized relationship between the Chi-I program and local school districts and administrators, and I am happy to say that right now Portland Public is making, for the first time in 4 years, real progress on actually getting a memorandum of understanding together with the county on this. 2 things very quickly. Last Friday, I went to Deborah Kafori's State of the County address, which was very nice. But most importantly for Portland Public Schools, it was moderated by Kevin Medica, and it was publicly announced that Mr. Medica has gone to work as Senator Lou Frederick's legislative aide. Mr. Medica was the highest ranking African American in the Portland Police Bureau. He was assistant chief, and most importantly for us, he has about 30 years experience working directly with children's issues. And as far as I'm concerned, Christmas has come early for us and for the children in Multnomah County. He brings an extraordinary degree of gravitas to children's issues, and I think we're going to see that starting to be reflected in the legislature. And then finally, this last weekend, I was in Salem. The Oregon School Boards Association board was meeting. We were doing our preliminary budget work for 2019, supporting the goals we passed last month, and we're concentrating, of course, primarily on statewide revenue reform. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Anthony. Anybody else have a committee meeting that needs to be reported on? Director
We
Costa?
had a legislative and Government Affairs Committee and Intergovernmental Committee, and really it was just a wrap-up of the special session, and talked a little bit about how we want to go about starting to talk about our priorities for a 2019 lobbying agenda.
At the FAO meeting, in addition to getting the budget status report, we also got a report, a very preliminary report on the efforts that are underway now to review our contracting processes, and this will cover contracts of all kinds from across the district. Ranging from very small to very large. The contracting procedures or absence thereof was identified very early on by Superintendent Guerrero as an area where we needed to do some serious evaluation and improvement. So this has been happening over a number of months already, and now is being looped into the budget process. So this is going to be an ongoing effort, and in the short term, we're going to have some decisions made about the value added from various contracts. And going forward, we're going to be, the staff are going to be working on developing a process to look at the internal processes and procedures that are in place around contracting. Who's got contract authority? What kind of accountability do we have for contracts? How are we monitoring? Are we embedding an evaluation function in the contracts? All of that kind of stuff. And the staff will be coming forward with regular updates to FAO over the next few months, and with an eye toward having a staff recommendation for reforming the contracting processes, probably sometime in the fall. Based on the evaluation of what's been happening and looking at best practices from other districts. So.
Thank you, Director Moore, and Superintendent Guerrero.
Well, as you saw from this evening's budget update, directors, already you can see the only way we're going to reconcile our revenues and our expenses is, as you saw noted, almost $6 million in non-personnel contracted services that we'll have to find inefficiencies. So we've already prioritized level or better funding and staffing in addition to the wage increases. That's $14 million. But we're going to have to find $6 million in contracted services, and you're already seeing how deep, the central office give to the contribution is going to be. That's about 4 dozen positions. So it is becoming a trade-off and prioritization exercise here. So a good number of some of those contracts will kind of fall off in this budget development cycle. And as we move forward with those that we believe we want to take a deeper look and analysis at and get into a rhythm of some quarterly reviews, we'll do in the fall.
And just to clarify, which district staff person is on point? The buck stops with the superintendent.
Well, you've met our interim CFO and interim budget director, and of course we need to identify a permanent team for the fall. But in regards who's going to be point on the contracted services, right. Well, we'll say our budget director for today. Okay. But I think what I would truly like to see is a multi-department team that does a quality review or has a panel process. There's just so many places, I don't want to start to list out here, but we have contracted services originating from any and every department in the school district, and so I think we need to have a tighter process there.
Okay, thank you. Any other reports? All right, then, let's see. We have our business agenda. The board will now consider the remainder of the business agenda, having already voted on resolutions 5615 through 5618. Board members, are there any items that you'd like to pull for a separate discussion and vote on? No changes? Okay. Ms. Houston, are there any changes to the business agenda?
No.
Do I have a motion and a second to adopt the business agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Sparza-Brown and seconded by Director Rosen. Is there any public comment on the business agenda? Is there any board discussion on the business agenda? Board will now vote on the business agenda. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Are there any abstentions? The business agenda is approved by 6-0 vote, with Student Representative Tran absent this evening. Okay. All right, so just a reminder to board members that immediately following tonight's board meeting, we have 2 executive sessions that are scheduled. They are in the Willamette room, is that correct, or are they in a different room?
Willamette.
In the Willamette room. So with that, the meeting is adjourned, and our next public meeting is on March 20th. Okay, just for the record.